Long time. Good morning. I think it's a special occasion today. We have our farewell to Mary Mora, and this is our first meeting person with Darren, so I'm excited to see you all. So I'll go ahead and start with the roll call, please. Trustee Fairhouse?
Here.
Trustee Carey?
Here.
Trustee Calvin?
Here.
Trustee Brody?
Here.
Trustee Gianoni? Here. Trustee Jay?
Present.
Trustee Rose? Present. Trustee Cabral? Here. And Trustee Berger?
Here.
Great. So we've got everyone here, and welcome. And our next agenda item is public comment. Do we have any public comment?
None at this time, Madam.
Okay. Just want to make sure, again, there's no public comment. Right. And moving right along to recognitions, awards, and items of special interest.
I think that's me, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. And we're going to start with our quarterly awards. And I have both the first and second employee of the quarter awards to present this morning. So first, for the first quarter, we're here to announce the Q1 Employee of the Quarter award winner is Brenda Goldstein. Brenda started working for the Reno Tahoe Airport in November of 1999 as an airport facility custodian. This award comes from Brenda's enthusiasm for excellence. Brenda was recognized by a passenger that found her efforts to be above and beyond the typical interactions often received while traveling. Brenda provided multiple upbeat and positive greetings to this passenger while maintaining her assigned areas to the highest standards. This interaction made such an impression that the passenger wrote to our CEO about this wonderful experience. This illustrates Brenda's consistent commitment to the Thrive values that make our airport great. Not only was Brenda able to provide a personal and positive interaction with our passengers, but did so without sacrificing her efforts to assure the highest standards in her assigned duty area. Although this was recognized in a gracious note to CEO Mary Mora, it is practice that Brenda provides on a daily basis. So please join me in congratulating Brenda for the first quarter award. Brenda, please come on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can you stop for a picture, please?
Absolutely.
This is important to Brenda's family. Let me get up close.
Can I get up close?
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, and now for the second quarter awards. And I'm happy to announce that the second quarter Employee of the Quarter award winners are Randy Anderson and Derek Davis. Randy started with the Airport Authority in August 2003 and is currently a Facilities Technician 3. And Derek joined the Authority in January 2018 as a Facilities Technician 2 and is now Facilities Jet Bridge Technician 4 since March of this year. This award stems from Randy and Derek's versatility. One afternoon, Derek and Randy were ending their shift and leaving after a long night of moving snow. As they walked down the ticketing corridor, they came upon two American Airlines employees standing around a man who was slumped in a chair. They quickly determined the man was in serious distress and immediately took action, working together to get the man onto the ground and start CPR. They continued to perform CPR on the man until Art and Remza arrived on the scene to take over, eventually stabilizing the man enough to transport him to the hospital. The versatility to step in and step up may have saved a life that day. Both Derek and Randy had already worked a long shift, but they were able to adapt and recognize the situation needed them to take action immediately. The ability to be flexible and agile in the face of the challenges and unexpected situation is the embodiment of the Thrive value of versatility. So please join me in congratulating Randy and Derek for their award. Randy? Thank you for the award. Oh, thank you. Want to get a picture here? All right, and Derek? Yep. We'll have that important piece there. Thank you, gentlemen. Congratulations. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Moving right along, Brian?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, any recognitions?
Yes. I'm sorry.
All right, sorry. So I just wanted to do one of our new employees, Brent, our manager of airport communications. To let you know, Brent, we're very excited to have Brent on our team with over 40 years of experience in public safety communication centers. He served as supervisor, division manager level for 6 different public safety agencies. A strong background in emergency operations communications and holds a full range of NIMS, which is National Incident Management System. He has frontline experience in law enforcement as a deputy sheriff in Colorado, as a line volunteer firefighter, and then emergency communications of public safety dispatcher. So he's worked on the line and then worked on the front line as fire communications division manager for the city of Stockton. He's been a communications center manager for the University of Hawaii Department of Public Safety, another director of public safety communications at the Cayman Islands government. So he's been around the world a bit, and also director of the Pickens County Sheriff's Office communications director and others. So with a great background and experience, we're really excited to have him join our team. I'm not sure if he's on the call, but please join me in welcoming Brent Finster to the team.
I think Brian is.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Chair Sarraza, CEO Darren Griffith. Appreciate you all being here this morning. It's a special meeting, obviously, because we are welcoming a new CEO, but also saying goodbye to not only our 7-year CEO, but a 19-year employee of the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority, Marilee Morrow. So we'd like to start it off in kind of a fun style, but also, I hope, a heartwarming style. We've had a lot of people in this room, and a lot of people in our community who want to say goodbye to you in special fashion. And here in our COVID world, that's not easy to do. So what we decided to do is create a video, which we thought was the best way to allow our community, our airports, and the whole airport family to give you a proper goodbye and recognition of 19 years of service. So if you'll indulge us, please, the video.
Hi everyone. Hi Marilee. I just wanted to send you this quick video to wish you a happy bon voyage, and mostly I just wanted to tell you how much I admire you and want to thank you for everything that you've given back to this city and our incredible airport. You really paved the way on so many different levels, and so I just want you to know that I'm grateful to be your friend, and that I was able to watch all your incredible accomplishments and awards at the Reno Tahoe Airport while you served. And the other thing I really want you to know is you always were a class act, and certainly someone that I look up to. So thank you for everything that you've done, and we'll keep doing great things together because you promised me that you were going to serve on one of our boards and commissions, so I'm holding you to that. All right, my friend, well wishes, and hope to see you soon. Mwah.
Marilee, parting is such sweet sorrow. You have been an incredible ally of the Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce, forming a relationship with us like no other. We've been inextricably linked for several years, and I couldn't be prouder of the work we've done together.
I want to thank Marilee for her amazing efforts to make this a world-class airport and for all she's done to make our community better. I can tell you personally that whenever we needed help from the airport, from any of the other entities here, Marilee and her team stepped up and got it done.
Marilee Moore has been such a significant force in our community, not only from the airport and air service development, but closer to home for me, the relationship that she has fostered with the RSCBA and the collaboration between the RSCBA and the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority has been better than I've ever seen it in the history of the RSCBA.
Hey Marilee, if you're watching this video, one of us is retiring, and it's obviously not me. So on behalf of Southwest at the Reno station and myself and the leadership team, we just want to say thank you for all the good years, for being a great partner, keeping our airline moving, and keeping the airport moving.
Hi, Ms. Mora. This is Debbie, and I'm very sorry I don't have one of my dogs with me, but all of us want to say thank you for your support. It's been 7 years now, and we're so grateful to you for having initiated this program.
Marilee, one of the things I would say that I admire the most, and Darren's got big shoes to fill, is that steady hand and that calm, cool leadership. If you get upset, you sure didn't show it. I think the culture and your kind heart speaks volumes of what you're like as a leader.
Working with you for the last 3 years has been absolutely amazing. Told you that I've never had coffee in my life, but to this day I still have not had coffee. But the one thing I noticed in that luncheon that day was your enthusiasm. The transfer of enthusiasm is huge, and you can see that in the staff here at the airport. Under your leadership, you've taken this airport to what it is today.
Marilee, your future is looking so bright. I had to wear my shades today. I just want to thank you for your spectacular work at the Reno Tahoe International Airport and what you've done for this region overall. You've had a stellar career, and we all so appreciate your leadership and your passion for the airport. Well, you moved us. Have a great retirement. Thank you for everything. Thank you for everything that you've taught me and the passion that you have allowed me to share with you on the Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Marilee, for your service to our community, this region, and our airport. We wish you much health and success in your next adventure, and we look forward to serving you as a guest in the airport soon. All the best.
I wish you all the best in your retirement. I hope that your time without us will be as meaningful to you as your time with us is meaningful to us. Best of luck.
Just want to say a big thank you, Marilee, for all you've done for the airport. We're sure going to miss you, but we know you won't be far away.
And best of everything to you in your retirement. Lots of love, Southwest.
I wish you nothing but the best, and thank you very, very much for all that you've done for me, for the board, for the airport, and for our community.
Thank you, Marilee. Thank you. Thank you, Marilee.
Thank you, Marilee.
Thank you, Marilee.
Hey, Marilee. Thanks for everything.
Congratulations, Mom, on your retirement. We are so proud of you. We couldn't have asked for a better role model. Thank you, and we can't wait to see you in your retirement and come and hang out with us either in Denver or in Tahoe. Love you, and thank you for being such a great inspiration to both of us.
You're muted, Marty.
My heart, thank you so much. As I said, you've just been a calm, cool demeanor, and thank you for this transition with our new CEO. You sit on longer, you're just a class act, and just want to say thanks again for everything you've done. At this time, I know Marilee's family is there out there at Zoom land. They want to say hi, but I do want to give, Carol, can you come up for a moment? So this is my sister Kristen. Washington County School District Echo Loader School. Hey, hi, Kristen. My daughter Caitlin in Los Angeles. Where's your dog? She has a COVID adoption dog. And this is Jeff Fowler and Hayden Fowler.
Can you say hi?
Hello. So, Mary, we were trying to decide what to get you for your retirement. And Carol came up with, I thought, probably the best gift that you'd ever want. So I'm going to let Carol present it to you on behalf of the board, Brenda Goldstein, for all your years of service. Oh my gosh! I don't know that this was really my idea, but all the boards support this, and the chair definitely for that. So I know this is coming and going, but it keeps you coming back to it because you're part of it. That is wonderful. Thank you. And a golden ticket. Wow, that is so cool. Thanks so much. And I'm so glad to meet Jessica because I got to talk to her on the phone once. Denver, she was my connection to my son, so thank you.
Finally, we have a gift that was given to Mary Lee before, and we took it back and we used it again. This is a crystal airplane. You're going to be spending a lot of time on airplanes traveling around the world and enjoying your retirement, but this is the one plane that she wanted. This is a crystal airplane. It was engraved the first time Mary Lee retired from the airport, and also now this time as well. So both sides of the aircraft are now engraved. So this is a gift to you. I'll put it back in the box. As you know, it's very fragile, but this is our airport gift to you as well. Thank you.
Good job, Tom.
That's really not the last gift from Mary Lee. The crystal chairs or crystal airplane's great, the golden ticket, but parting wouldn't be complete without yet another plaque on your wall. And for all departing retirees, the airport has a plaque, and I have the pleasure of presenting this to you, Mary Lee. The Reno Tahoe Airport Authority wishes every success to Mary Lee Mora. Thank you for your 19 years of dedication and loyalty from 1999 to 2011 and from 2013 to 2020. Here you are, Mary Lee. Thank you very much.
I'm totally shocked by that video, but this team is so creative. It just is amazing, and what a beautiful thing for me to design memories here. Try not to cry. Thank you to my family for joining me today and joining me on this journey. So when I announced my retirement last November, I would not have imagined what would have happened in that time, that 8.5 months between November and now. We were on a roll back then. And I thought it was a really good time to change leadership because we needed somebody to take things into the future with all of our master plan projects. So we're getting closer to that phase 2 on the CONRAC. We were starting the programming studies for the ticketing area and the concourse. The calendar year was phenomenal. 2019, we finished with 4.6 million passengers, a number we had not seen since 2008. We had 57 months of consecutive growth. We entered 2020 with a really great strategic change by this board, which was to focus on safety and security, and we were along that path. Then came March 12th, when the governor Fiscal declared a state of emergency because of the pandemic. The passenger numbers hit rock bottom in April, with a day I can remember that there were only 213 passengers outbound. Those of us who were coming into work, and I want to thank our first responders, I want to thank our ARF team who came in, and it's not only, they had a double jeopardy when they came to work. It wasn't only a place they worked, it was a place they lived. These were days when you walked in the terminal and on the concourse, and you only saw other employees in that area. But during these very difficult times, I saw the spirit of employees, the thrive values being lived, out as custodians, turned over every chair to clean underneath. And again, our fire team that faced that double threat of coming into work. Our security specialists out front greeting customers. The CARES Act really brought welcome relief to the budget, and we were able to look at retaining 90% of our employees through the calendar years. I think in those months, those times, that it was a struggle to look at trying to figure out how to end the fiscal year 1920. Announcing and introducing Darren to the community, and all of us can look at the new agenda and say, change has come about. That streamlining is amazing. And when I hold up the agenda and it's much shorter and more concise, good for you. I think there's going to be really, really good changes ahead. I want to say thanks to the board. This has been just an opportunity of a lifetime. I want to say thanks to Ann Morgan. She's been somebody that you just would pick up the phone and she was always there. And she always started the conversation with, what do you want to achieve, and let me help you get there. I want to thank the senior team of this organization. They are brilliant minds. They are dedicated people. And I really want to say that about all of our employees, the kind of dedication that they showed being essential workers during the pandemic. It's the kind of dedication that they have shown each and every day. You know, my fondest memories will always be of people. I think we always say that. And we always consider ourselves family. And I'm just going to say a couple of times that I remembered what family meant here. I remember the moment that firefighter Mike Earl Jr. joined RTA in November 2015, following in the footsteps of Mike Earl Sr., who had retired. That was just an amazing time before the board to have our new firefighter, along with his father, I think, who might have been here 30 years. And no one will ever forget Adrian Miranda joining the organization in July 2015, when he announced before this board that he was going to either be the CEO or the Chief Operating Officer. And you know, he's on his roll to get there. He just celebrated 5 years with the organization, and he was promoted to airport communications just after a little over a year with us. And he's brought his brother to us as well, who joined Alan joined the organization as an airfield tech in 2017. So one of the things I think I can look back and really feel proud of, because there's been some great milestones, but you know, it is always the people. And I think if we look at the track record here, that during the time I was here, the last 7 years, the internal promotions doubled to 40%, and that is amazing. A lot of changes happened during my career. For someone of my generation, it was never thought that a female could be a CEO or earn a man's wage. You know, it's right now that gender is not what counts, it's the qualifications and the talents that count. I'm thankful to I'm close to 20 years here, but with RTA, with 2 tours of duty, times ahead will be difficult. I know there are tough decisions that Darren and the team are going to have to make.
but they're already moving forward, and I have great faith as a traveler, leaving out of town tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., that this airport, both of the airports, both Reno and Stead, are in good hands and will be really, really great airports for the community. So again, I want to thank the board because you have invested, each of you have invested yourselves with your talent and your time far beyond what you probably would happen with other boards. And again, to all of the employees of the Airport Authority, thank you so much. And just have a great meeting, and I will always cherish the time that I have spent here. And thank you for this phenomenal video today. I'm just, I don't know what, I don't have words to say that I'm so struck by that, but thank you for the great farewell, and good luck to all of you. Thank you. And I know there are some other board members who couldn't participate in the video who wanted to say a few words, Shirley. So I'm going to open the floor, go back down, and Trustee Rose, you can start off.
Well, whenever I get happy for other people, I tend to cry, so I'm going to make this short. Merrily, it has been a true honor to work with you, to get to know you, just to be in your presence. I don't think there's enough words for that, but what I really want to say is that Trustee Speraza, Chair Speraza, and Mayor Sheedy summed it up very nicely when they said that you are a class act. I don't think there's a better description, and I personally just am hoping that every day going forward for you is filled with love and adventure.
Trustee Gianoli?
Mary Lee, I also, you've been on the helm through some of the most difficult and better economic times. You've always been with a steady hand. You've engaged the community, and we are fortunate to have the airport we have today because of a lot of the hard work you've done. I just want to wish you happiness, peace, and a great future in your next adventures. And I've so appreciated working with you. Thank you.
Any other trustee comments? Trustee Terry?
Thank you. I want to thank Mayor Lee for her dedication to this community, this airport, and her particular attention to the needs and growth of the employees. This place has changed under her leadership in very positive ways, and I think that the ladder of success is in place for Darren. And that came from hard work from our departing CEO. And I just want you to know that every day is Saturday now. Spend those Saturdays wisely because you've earned every one. Thank you, Mary Lee.
Trustee Caroselli?
Does the microphone work?
Yes.
Oh, anyway, I'm probably the oldest serving board member at this point. Wow. But again, we've had some good times, some tough times, but they were great times, and I double down on everything everybody else had to say, and I hope to see you in the near future, but also in your retirement. I wish you blue skies and green lights, and thank you for all your help in making this airport what it is today. Thank you.
And Trustee Berger, I don't know if you wanted to say anything if you were out there.
Yes, I'd love to say a couple words. Mary Lee, what I think of the last few years is a roller coaster. We've gone up to great heights. We've gone down to unbelievable world, things none of us knew would happen. The one constant thing has been you of just calmly staying in there. And what a great job doing that during the times. Thank you very much.
Anybody else, staff or anyone else here that would like to say a few words?
I would like to, go ahead.
Hello.
Did I step on someone's toes here? Sorry.
Please speak.
So I'm Mary Lee's sister, Kristen. She already introduced me. I just want to say that I've been in awe of you my whole life, Mary Lee, because anything you've ever attempted, you've been successful at. It's been exciting to watch your career. but not only your career, you've raised such amazing daughters. And I wish you congratulations as you begin a new chapter. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. Any other public comment at this time?
We would like to say something.
Great.
Do you want to say hi, Mabel? Say hi.
Hi.
Congratulations, Mom, and we wish you the best of luck in your next adventures, and we're looking forward to seeing you a little more here. Say bye, everyone.
Marilee, again, thank you so much on behalf of the board for everything you've done, and I know we'll be seeing you around. I'll probably see you at the next garage sale.
Thank you very much. This has been a wonderful farewell. I just really appreciate working with the board and the airport. So I'll get out of here, see through your meeting, and thank you for the wonderful video. That's so cherished. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And congratulations to Lori. She has done a phenomenal job. She was a great hire.
All right. This is Larry, your parent. Item 3.2, introduction of retired new and promoted employees.
I think Larry did that already.
Are we done? Okay. Tenant communications, do we have any tenant communications?
Nothing I'm aware of.
Okay. So moving right along, approval of the minutes of the June 26th special board meeting for possible action. Do I hear a motion on the floor?
Move to accept the minutes of June 26, 2020 special board meeting.
We have a motion by trustee Jay and a second by trustee Rose. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, anybody opposed? Item 4.2, minutes of the July 9th, 2020 regular board meeting. Have a motion?
Move to approve the minutes.
A motion by trustee Giannoli, second by trustee Rose. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item number 5, approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the agenda by trustee Jay. We have a second by trustee Farahi. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sorry. None. Okay, discussion and possible action items. We don't have any on consent this month, so we'll go ahead and move on to item number 8.1. And I do believe I talked to the board last month at the board meeting about streamlining some of these boards and committees. So if you see an attached, I just want to make sure before a motion's made that all the board members have the committees that they want. And if anybody wants to be on a committee or liaison or something, go ahead and speak now and we'll make a motion. But I think I've got everyone's wishes on the different committee assignments and liaison reports. So we changed some of the committees over to just liaisons, and I think I spoke to the board about that. We just want to make sure everyone is happy with their committee assignments. Just one, if I could, for the board, I think I would like to be on the air service, to add as a liaison to that, so when they meet, and that was the only modification that I'd made.
And I always say ex officio every committee.
Oh, okay. And then trustee Caroselli, you're okay with the airport noise committee? The airport noise committee, you're on finance? That's what I heard,
Well, good. Welcome back to the committee.
In finance as well, so full circle.
gonna be a swear word.
All right, so do we have a motion? Is everyone happy with the committee assignments?
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by trustee Giannoli and a second by trustee Rose. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. And we have item 8.2, which is approval of the dissolution of the RTAA Public Safety Committee. And I do want to explain what we're doing here, and it's so to Vice Chair Terry. This, I think, now that we have our new CEO on, and we're going to get Mr. Brown's report later in the agenda, I think we felt that it was appropriate that the whole board be included in the public safety discussions, and I think our CEO is hitting the ground running and is tackling this issue. So it's not going away, so I just want to clarify, it's just going to be brought to the whole board, and that's why we're going to streamline the process, and that's why we're going to disband the public safety board. So we want any of the board members to think public safety wasn't a priority, as you know, it's top priority. So if we can get a motion, trustee Terry.
Just a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, and, oh, okay, sure, trustee Rose? Yeah, I'm sorry, who was the second? Trustee Farabi, and then we have a question from the floor, trustee Rose.
Just a quick question. So normally, this committee would have given a regular update during the committee section at board meetings. So will we still be giving a regular update on how we're moving forward with public safety?
Yeah, I think the plan is, and certainly I'm just going to wait until Mike Brown's report, but I would like to have action items placed on future agendas once we have that public safety report to make sure things are being followed through on and we're moving forward in the process. So the plan would be no different than, I think, the financial update to bring the public safety report back to the full board. Perfect.
Thank you.
So, all right, we have a motion and second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. And now Darren, 8.3, and Randy, update on budget for fiscal years 2019, 20, and 20 and 21 for possible action.
Good morning, Chair Barraza, Trustees, CEO, Brent. My name is Randy Carlton. I'm the CFO for the RTAA. I have a few slides to share with you this morning. We moved through a budget process in April, May, June. That was difficult, challenging. There's probably a few other adjectives we could use, but we did get there. I'd like to thank the board and the management team for a very collaborative effort, as indicated by former CEO Mora. So this is our second update. We started this in July, and we're working towards establishing a standard format to where we could bring back information each month and give you updates of what has happened since the last time we met. And I think behind the question of can we put this on the agenda each month is to provide the board and staff with some answers to some of these questions that you see in front of you, and that is how we're doing, are we on track, and are there any adjustments that are needed. And I'll just start with the conclusion that at this juncture where we are in the fiscal year, no adjustments to the budget are warranted at this time. We certainly have our eye on a number of things, and I'll go over those things in a moment. This is a two-part presentation. I'll provide an overview, and then we'll take a deeper dive into our passenger traffic when we hear from Air Service Development. All right, so we are in a period of time where we have two fiscal years. We had last fiscal year that ended on June 30th, and we're currently in fiscal year 2021. The accounting staff, they are very busy wrapping up year end. We will come back to the board in December with our audited results. There is a lot of closing activities that we're conducting. One thing in particular is attention to our receivables. And the airport as a business, just like any business, we are looking very closely at our many accounts and doing everything we can to collect on amounts owed. We do have the 90-day deferral plan that was approved by the board, and that came to an end on July 31st. I do have an update on that later on in my presentation. We've adjusted and expanded that slightly. It estimated that we'd be deferring about $3.9 million of revenue that we otherwise would have collected last year. We deferred that until July 31st, and from an accounting perspective, right, we're able to accrue those collections into last year. So we expect to be made whole on those. We are receiving payments on that balance. We've collected about $2.7 million so far, and we're working with our tenants and business partners to pick up the remaining balance. It's a process where there's continuous communication with our tenants. We know that they too are going through their challenges as a business, and we have an open ear. We're listening to their concerns, and we're doing everything we can to work with them. One matter that should be of no news to everybody in the room is that there is a bankruptcy involving Hertz and DTG. It's the acronym for Dollar Thrift, the joint company. They filed bankruptcy that went into effect on May 23rd. So we are working through that process. There are amounts owed prior to that bankruptcy, and there are amounts owed after that date. And we are sorting through many, many details. My staff is working on this very closely. We are putting in some overtime hours on this, and as well as some other receivable collections. We do have a verbal commitment from Hertz. We had a conference call recently, this Friday, and we have a commitment from them that they will continue to pay the current billings as they come forward. And if need be, most of our tenant agreements, such as Hertz and others, they have security deposits and other forms of sureties that we can draw upon if an account should reach that default status. We do have that as a backstop. A couple of comments on last fiscal year, and then I do have some comments addressing the current year. We have provided you in the board packet the preliminary results for as of June 30th, end of our fiscal year. There are still some adjustments to make, and we will come back to the board with an audit in December. Our in-plane passengers for the year, we came down on our forecast to 1,690,000. That's about 47,000 passengers greater than what we were expecting. So that's a bit of good news on how we ended the year. When we look at our total revenues and our total expenditures, with a couple of indicators there, our revenues, as we expected, would be off. They were below budget. And fortunately, we've had a very good year, as Ms. Moore indicated, up until March. And fortunately, those good months of the first three quarters really helped offset the losses that we were incurring in that final quarter. But nonetheless, we did not meet our revenue expectations for last year by about 10%. When we look at our revenues, year over year, it's a common comparison that we use. It was about a 3.5% decline. So, in my opinion, not so bad when we look at our year-end results. On expenses, we put together cost reduction measures quickly once we saw that this pandemic was going to severely impact our passenger volume, and we began tightening the belt. And we froze positions, we eliminated unnecessary expenses, cut travel, and came up with a budget target of about 3.1 million, what we needed to reduce, and we were fortunate to not only meet that target, but did actually a little bit better than that. When we look at our expenses overall, we came in under budget by about 6.5%. All right, now talking about the current year, it was a difficult budget. We were facing a 57% reduction in our passenger year over year. We brought to the board a budget that had already gone through a number of reduction rounds with staff, and we ended up reducing the budget 15% from the time that we started our budget process, and that's over $8.3 million of reductions in this budget. It would have been much more severe. As you know, we were fortunate to receive CARES Act support, and we filled in about $12.9 million of CARES Act into balancing the current year budget. And, you know, I probably share this opinion with others that there's a question, a looming question of was that enough? And we put together a plan, shared it with the board, worked with our collective bargaining partners, and socialized a furlough plan that had several phases to it. And we are in that first phase now, and we will be coming back to the second and third phase should those triggers come into play. And CEO Griffin has already shared with the team that we will take a look at that very closely, and we will not shy away from making difficult choices if those circumstances should materialize. Some good news. You know, our passenger forecast is our passenger forecast. We look at this on a monthly basis. Last month, when we reported July results, we showed that we were ahead of our forecast, and that's the same report for today when we look at August. And you'll hear more from Hassan in a few minutes on that. So we are on track to meeting our August forecast for passengers. Our operating budget, it's really too soon to tell. I do have some indicators to share with you in a moment, but we are only a little more than a month into our fiscal year, and we will take a deeper dive with the board when we have that first quarter completed, and we will share that information with you, of course, at that time. So the status report from me is that so far so good. We do have a few watch items, and I'll go over. I've got a couple of lists here of items that we are watching closely. We will be relying on data in bringing forward our decisions about the budget. We will, unfortunately, do our best with that, but data in this type of organization, business is very frustrating, and we're often looking in the rearview mirror at our results. But we will bring forward with you any adjustments that we believe are called for. A couple things. Parking revenues. Good information here. We're exceeding our budget. It follows our passenger traffic patterns. So we received $337,000 for the month of July. That exceeded our budget target. To put that in perspective, it's still very far behind what a normal year would be, which is about $1 million a month. You can see on this line chart the decline in our parking revenue. This is just one indicator of many, but it is a good indicator because this is the closest thing that we have of real-time information, financially speaking, on how the airport is doing. And you can see that with the green line, that represents the actual receipts from our parking operation from prior to COVID through the period, and reflecting our trend upward since the bottom. The darker line, that's our forecast, that's our budget. As we reported, the July results are better than budget, and we certainly hope that that trend will continue. Okay, I mentioned a couple of those. This is the first one, unbudgeted items. In some of my comments, as we were working on the budget, I mentioned a number of times that the budget is very, very tight. It's to the bone, and we really do not have much flexibility in addressing unbudgeted items. So we are watching these things very closely. We're keeping track of them, and here's a few things to mention. One is that we made a change in our baggage handling system. We reduced the amount of operations because of the volume of bags went down significantly. So our facilities and maintenance department work closely with the vendor that supports the maintenance of the baggage handling system matrices, and we reduce services, we reduce the costs. We did all this in cooperation with the airlines. However, traffic has picked up, and that's good news. With additional traffic, we have to now maintain more systems, and that cost has gone up. The cost is paid for by the airlines, and they know that this is there. This is something that is this additional cost, something that they expect that we'll be making an adjustment on at mid-year to increase the baggage handling rate. A couple of things, I mentioned this earlier, there's federal activity to consider the next round of the CARES Act, there's the HEROES Act, there are potentially other forms of federal relief coming forward that can help small businesses. We recently had a meeting with ADG and CEO Brent, talked about what more we can do, and we expanded the deferred payment plan, made a slight modification to where for those internal small businesses, what we'd be doing through a contract amendment is changing the method of how they pay. You'd be changing from a fixed, what we call MAG, or minimum annual guarantee, to a percent of their gross sales. That will provide some relief. It does create a small impact on the authority, about $28,000, and we'll keep our eye on that. Excuse me. So to qualify for this, the business must be current on any of the backfilling, and we must be open, of course. So we will be putting together those contract amendments and bringing and working on those in the very near future. There's another impact. Again, this is the underlying good news is that we have the return of the Polaris flight from Reno to Guadalajara, and in the context of social distancing, we needed to address the concern to expand the queuing space at the FIS facility. And we did that, and I'll show you a picture or two here in a moment, to allow longer lines to be established with appropriate distance. And the team, by the way, did a phenomenal job here to put together the scope of what needed to be done, working with CDP, working with facilities and maintenance to get this done literally over a weekend in time for a Monday flight. So here's the couple of pictures. You can see that from the sidewalk, we have a fencing to secure the area and to provide more space for passengers to spread out as they're going through the deplaning process and inspections with CBP. The good news again is that Polaris is back. They reestablished their services. We have flights from Reno to Guadalajara to Kansas. Here's my next list, the budget watch items. Passengers, of course, that's our key metric here in this business operation. We know that the airlines and their restrictions for receiving the CARES Act money is lifted come October 1, and we are of the opinion that the airlines will shift to a profit-oriented business model. They are a business and they need to stay viable. provide service. What those services and the schedules look like is a bit of an unknown at this point in time. So that is something that we're in anticipation looking at very closely. Our cash on hand balances, when we look at, and this is no surprise either, we knew that we were going to be drawing on our reserves, and we have been. And our days cash on hand as of the end of June 30th is 445 days. That's a 20% decline year over year, and a third month in a row of declining balances. Now, we expect that to level off. We expect that that our budget will be achieved, and if we achieve our budget, then our daily cash on hand should take care of itself. Revenue collections continues to be something that we focus on in the accounting department, collecting the deferred amounts and other receivables. The Hertz bankruptcy, we will continue to work with them and try to collect as much as we can on that. So that is the general overview. I'm hoping it wasn't in too much detail, but enough to give you a sense of how we're doing. A key part of it is our passenger traffic. I'm going to turn it over to Hassan here in a minute. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them now.
Any questions from the board? I have several. Trustee Giannone?
I just have a question. I didn't really pay attention as I walked in today, but how many of our vendors are actually up and running, other than like coffee, and is that about it?
I'm going to have to ask Peter to handle that question.
Yeah, I can't imagine that it makes any sense for a lot of us.
For the record, Gina is Senior Vice President of Airport Economic Development. And in case I need a lifeline, we have our concessions manager, Shauna Carpenter, on Zoom. So as you've seen, everything pre-security is closed. We do have on Concourse Bravo, where Southwest is, we have Summit Travel. They are an ACDE and airport concessions disadvantaged business, minority owned. They have been open. We're trying to work with them on the JetBlue flight, as we do have one red-eye back. It's hopefully not temporary, but we're working on that and a vending solution there. And then on Concourse Charlie, where United is, we do have a restaurant bar open that's Captain Ford. But other than that, the only retail that is open is the CNBC store in the connector. Vino Bolo is open in the connector. Timber Ridge is open in the connector. McDonald's and Subway. Vino Bolo is doing very well, as is McDonald's. The other ones are still struggling a bit.
Thank you.
Trustee Jay?
Yeah, do we have any kind of matrix, or what would be the triggering mechanism for those other, PGA store and the restaurants, free security for them to open?
So I will call on Shauna Carpenter, and so while Marty gets her online, we do have a plan. They are operated by Perry's Lagardère. Perry's Lagardère is one of the few that are still paying the minimum annual guarantee. They have not paid back the deferment, but we have a call with them next week, and they think they're going to be requesting different types of rent relief consideration, and a CEO person will be on that call with us to hear what they're thinking. So I will ask, is Shauna on?
Yes, can you hear me? I am on. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, can you please explain the reopening plan?
Oh, I'm sorry, what was that?
Please explain the triggers you're working on with Perry's Lagardère and others to reopen.
Yes, absolutely. Shauna Carpenter for the record. And we are working with Parodies has about a 50% passenger level trigger to reopen the specialty retail outlets. So they've been working, aside from the specialty retail, the other
claim provisions on the C concourse. They are opening next, but waiting for their protective screens and a couple other measures in order to open and be successful with the current regulations. The rest of the outlets will be tested. They're working on a 2 to 3 day test per outlet as passenger levels are there to ensure that the revenue is sustainable for each location. But based on the last conversation with them, it was a 50% passenger level trigger for the rest of the specialty outlet stores. And the same approach for SSP for the rest of the food and beverage outlets will be, they don't have a specific passenger level trigger. They're kind of gauging sales at the open outlet Timber Ridge, and then the rest, again, will be done on a trial basis to make sure the sales are sustainable. The issue is bringing back staff and making sure that they can provide hours for their staff and obviously staff the outlets appropriately.
Thank you, Shauna. And I would like to give a shout out to Shauna, who is every day tweaking this and managing this and has been since the moment, when we mentioned we went down to 200 and some passengers, doing a great job, as well as Brett, who is handling the same types of situations with the rental cars. They're doing a phenomenal job.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Trustee Rose, yes. Tina, are we anticipating that everyone will reopen, or is there any possibility that some people will not be able to reopen?
At this time, we're hoping that people will reopen. Some of the SFP America is an international firm. They have invested millions of dollars into this airport. They don't intend to leave. The same thing is true with our retail concessionaires, Parodies and Love-It-Air. The ones that are at risk are Harley-Davidson, Subway, and Fuel Rod, and that's who you're seeing us address at this time. Our prioritization was to make sure everybody that was an ACDBE, a DBE vendor, we only have 2, McDonald's and the store I told you about, Charlie on Bravo, they're both limited percent of growth immediately due to a 25% month-over-month decline, and that's in a contract. But what we do have, after we gave relief to Subway and Harley-Davidson, it's just not enough for them to sustain it. We don't want to lose those vendors. So that's why you're seeing the CEO's working decision to support our recommendation to allow them to have another 6 months of relief by moving from the percent of growth with a caveat that they must be open. So Harley-Davidson has to reopen for that to happen. Subway's already open, but they are struggling. And these are local, regional, mom-and-pop shops that we wanted to make sure we could support if possible.
Thank you very much.
On that same topic, do we know how many of those businesses got the PPP? And I know RGJ did, could look it up, but I'd like to know, as airport staff, how many of them received the PPP in the airport?
So the big companies, the Parodies, Love-It-Air, and SSP America don't qualify. These are big corporations. So I'm going to ask Shauna again, because to make sure I get this right off my memory, I believe that Subway may have, and I'm not sure if McDonald's did. And then Summit Travel, Senator Bernice Matthews' operation on Bravo would be, I think, the only ones eligible, as well as Harley-Davidson. So Shauna, if you could come back online and make sure I got that accurately.
That is correct, yes. And we specifically requested all concessionaires who had been requesting any sort of relief to keep us advised of any additional relief outside of the payment deferrals we had provided. And so there had not been any other changes to that. So Tina did capture that correctly, and we have requested and been in regular communications
to make sure we're aware of any additional relief they have received, so we can, keep track of that and allocate any other additional deferrals appropriately.
And the reason I'm asking that question, all the local governments got a round of COVID funds, and some of those funds are for business relief. And I think maybe staff coordinating with them, I know City of Reno, they're all looking at programs for small business. And some of these may make or break the businesses here, and this is essential operations here at our airport. This is people traveling, keeping open, and I think if any businesses, especially our local tenants in here who would qualify, I think if we could coordinate with them, I don't know if we're talking thousands of dollars. I know they're looking at the grant amounts, but I sure would like to do some coordination, and I do want to thank Tina and Darren coming in, and I know Trustees Berger had mentioned this last meeting, but really working with our businesses in the airport. I mean, there are, we have our loyal tenants here who've been serving. Unfortunately, some of them just opened too, so very concerned. So that round, I don't want to miss out on that, because if anything would qualify, I think our businesses at the airport, I'm not sure about the national corporation, but there is some restriction on those funds if they had already gotten some PPP. I don't know if you can mix, but in this case, you may be able to. So if staff could just look into that.
Thank you, Dr. Serrata, Chair. If I may, we as, EDON and NNDA and the Chamber and all of these entities are pushing it out. And as that happens, we have pushed it out to all of our tenants, and through, not just in the terminal. So, whether it's, REW on an outside property that auto repair, we've passed it out and pushed it out a lot. And we will continue to look at that and maybe give them more connections to the city side. But it's been through those three entities or four entities that we've really received a lot of communication and pushed it out. So we're working on that, but that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you. And I don't think they've adopted their regs. I mean, I just have to watch these meetings, so probably too much of them. But yeah, so they're in discussions now about how they're going to roll out with those businesses. So I think that's important. And maybe Trustee Rose, you being involved in that too, the small business.
If I could just make one comment and keep in mind, most of the small businesses that receive their PPP receive their money in the month of May, which means that their 2.5 months is up, right, August 15th, right? If they received at the beginning of May going forward. Some received in April, so some are already out. But so the big concern is those that did receive the money are running out this month. And the problem that I see with the people on airport property, particularly inside the airport, that received money, they weren't really able to reopen and rehire all their staff. So a lot of their PPP is not going to be forgivable like some of the others are. So I definitely see a real problem at this point, because there is no new PPP coming at this point for businesses. So I think that they're actually about to get in more trouble than they were in before. Just my 2 cents.
So yeah, staff could look into that. And then, Randy, do we have departments to see if they're on track? One of the things I've been concerned about, overtime. Where are we with overtime with public safety, in particular on the fire side? Where are numbers tracking in that department?
I don't have that information for you this morning, but I'll certainly make a point of including in our next. And we just started our fiscal year in July, so at this point, we're still working within our approved budget.
And were you referring to the current fiscal year or previous one, Jim?
Yeah, I would like to know how that's been tracking the last several months since the budget's been brought to us. And we've adopted strict protocols for, our budget this cycle. So, yes, I would like that for this fiscal year, but also how we've been tracking the last few months. I mean, we're talking, $28,000 to help our small businesses, things like that. So I just think we've got to be tracking those budgets very, very closely, and so that's something I'd be interested in. As we move forward with these financial reports, is getting that information by department. Are we on track on every department from what this board adopted as a budget? So I think, I know our new CEO's only been in a couple weeks, but that's definitely something that I'll be looking forward to in the coming months. It's kind of standard in the budget field. I think Lisa, Sean, you guys have done this in local government. I would like to see that track every month to see where we are, and in particular in that department. I want to see those numbers where we're tracking from last year as well. And then just one more question. I'm not sure if this is for you, Randy, or Darren, but the board in the past, I just want to know where we're tracking. I guess my concern is being reactive on this a little bit, because I don't know if we're getting some indication from the airlines of, we're coming up on that October timeline and I know we're going to get the report from Hassan, but I want to make sure, and I think the board was very clear on this, I don't want to be reactive in this. I'd hate to see us wait to make some budgetary moves, whether it be furloughs or other things, because we're sliding. I see the charts with our parking going up and our revenue going up, but I also look at the other jurisdictions in our region, particularly the RSCBA has made substantial cuts. We know the tourism industry. I just want to make sure and that we're giving our new CEO the tools to act immediately to be able to address any kind of budgetary issues that you foresee coming, Darren. Because I think the board, the last thing that I know anyone on this board wants to do is lay anyone off in these times, and I just want to make sure whether we're doing the appropriate measures, whether it's furloughs, whether it's continued budget reductions, so we're being proactive and not reactive. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll just take a second and speak to that. As Randy mentioned, we do have a plan, a furlough plan that, was adopted by this board. And like many airports, what we knew in April and May when we were building our budgets is what we knew in April and May. And you may recall the national narrative at that time was that COVID was going to burn out in the summertime and we were going to start a slow recovery and hopefully the fall would be good. And I think we've learned that there was no playbook for addressing this. Nobody's ever experienced it before. Every airport's trying to figure this out. Every organization's trying to figure this out. That narrative didn't really hold true. It certainly didn't burn out, and it certainly is unknown what's going to happen this fall. We continue to see impacts. My concern is, like Randy's and yours, Madam Chair, that we're looking at trailing indicators. And the one forward-looking indicator we have is airline schedules, which Hassan is about to talk about, so I won't steal all his thunder, but it is more volatile than I've ever seen in my career. And what I've talked with our senior leadership team about is revisiting the plan that was adopted, which I think calls for a possible action November 1st. I'm not sure we can wait till November 1st, and I'm not sure the plan that was adopted by this board will be aggressive enough. And as an ops manager, former ops manager, now CEO, in the ops world, you always want to have a plan and a backup plan. And I want to have both of those, working with my team and brainstorming the measures you talked about, Madam Chair, as well as anything else we should be considering, and acting on a shorter timeline as we see the few leading indicators that we can access trending down. I don't want to find out we're underwater and then be trying to figure out what to do. So we are in full agreement. This is what leadership teams have to do, and every business, but especially the airport business right now, is be as aggressive as we can be and play offense if we can. So message received, and I'm working on it.
Thank you very much. And are there any other questions from the board at this time on our budget report?
Trustee Rose, just a quick comment. Randy, thank you very much. That was a wonderful report. It was
for much of it, Randy, and thank you for all your hard work. It's not easy to try and find clarity in all the things. Thank you. And Darren, for that being your first major statement, I think, in your first board meeting, at least for me, and I think for many of the board members, that was exactly what we were looking for. We were very concerned as the pandemic started, and frankly, that message, the conviction in your voice, and the approach that you're going to take to this is exactly what we were hoping for. And we thank you. You have our full support in any way that we can be here for you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much, Randy. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for those comments, and I'll be sure to pass along your comments to the staff, and the staff is working really hard, especially now. They're not only trying to work with our tenants, they're also doing some system implementations as well, so certainly pass along your comments. Thank you. And now, Kazan will provide an air service development report.
Thank you, Randy. Can someone?
Kazan, there's something on your end that's echoing. Do you have two devices there that are
Just
working? You may want to come into this room and give your presentation in here.
Sounds good.
That would have been fun. Marty, it sounds like you might be coming from our mics, possibly picking up the speaker there.
Well, they're only doing it with key speak.
Not any of the other speakers on the.
I'm not sure, that's a theory, but I think it was originated in this area, but I will find out. I think they're pretty good.
Good morning, everybody. For the record, my name is Hassan Alka, Manager of Air Service Development. Morning, Trustees, Madam Chair, Mr. Griffin, staff. So this is a standing item on the Air Service Development. We're going to talk about how we're trending in terms of passenger traffic and how we're trending against the rest of the U.S. And then we'll also talk about a little bit about where we are in terms of schedules, our current schedules, and how it leads into the fall schedule. So bear with me, folks. Most of us have seen this chart before. What you're looking at is a daily, year-over-year passenger traffic for the entire U.S. The red line that you see is this year, and the gray line is last year. As you can see, starting 4th of July, it's starting to kind of plateau a little bit. So the U.S. demand kind of found its the perfect spot they were at with the existing capacity and passenger demand. We're trending along just about 72% below last year. So what it means for Reno. So as you know, Reno has an excellent product. It's an outdoors product, so we kind of trending slightly differently. We have great community partners, and they're going above and beyond to make sure that rent comes back. So what you're looking at again is a year-over-year daily analysis for passenger trends here. We are trending slightly better than the national average. It's about 8 points. As you can see, we're at 62% below last year. But then again, folks, that's a big difference. It's not, we're trending about 38% of the traffic last year. So think about it. It's not what we want to be, but then again, we have a lot of capacity in the market, shaping very few passengers. So good news is that we are trending in the right direction. There was a blip in the beginning and mid-June, or so at the beginning in mid-July, where we saw a little bit of decline. And that was due to the fact that the 4th of July phenomena, when things opened up, restrictions were eased up, folks went out, the cases went up for COVID-19, and we did see an impact. However, we're slightly getting to about 2,600 passengers a day. So that's kind of the sweet spot when we talk international. So we know where we were back in March. Marilyn had mentioned 57 consecutive months out of February of this year of year-over-year passenger growth. From mid-March, we saw that there. We saw 95% year-over-year decline in March. And we did hit our bottom at 8,680 passengers. We've never seen that before. So we started to crawl back up. We did notice some additions in May, June, and then of course July. May and June kind of trended slightly better than what we wanted it to be. But in May, we did see last day bookings. Even though these are last day bookings, the numbers that we saw before does not include the last day numbers. So what happened in June and July, and we saw cancellations. Or forgive me, we saw additional bookings as opposed to cancellations. April was cancellations, May and June were bookings. So the final number actually came out higher than what we anticipated. Now let's take a look at where August is going to be. August is trending slightly better, as I mentioned, 2,600 passengers. But what we noticed in July was there were last-minute cancellations, last-day cancellations, and that is worrying. What happened on July 15th was USVC came out and publicly announced they were canceling their events. It had a major impact on major airlines here. They saw massive cancellations down the road into fall. So there are a lot of events that are being canceled. It has a negative impact on our traffic. So Randy had mentioned 2021 forecast, and thank you, Mr. Griffin, you mentioned that the information that we had back in April and May, that's what we had to work with. And based on that information that is provided by airlines, we came up with this forecast. And the methodology is very different than what we are typically used to. So we created a July baseline and gave it a growth rate for the rest of the year. A little less than a million passengers, significantly more than last year. So May, we did see traffic starting to come back, flights starting to come back. June and July, and I said, okay, let's test the market. Summer is the peak season for us. May, June, and July, August. And then in July, American Airlines and some of the others came up publicly and said, we're going to be very aggressive. We're going to flood the market with seats. Here we come summer. Unfortunately, summer didn't show. August with high capacity, we have 42 average daily flights. But think about it, we're still about 43% below last year. And some experts believe this capacity is probably the highest this year in 2020, in the month of August. Enough doom and gloom. Let's talk about what we have had. Thank you, Randy. Thank you to the staff. It was a multi-department effort to bring back Volaris. So Volaris started August 3rd with a twice-a-week service, Monday and Friday. They're running about 70 to 75% load factors. But then again, it was very, very difficult to get them back. And I'd be remiss if I don't say shout out to the CBP officers, staff there, that made it all happen. Thank you again. JetBlue is kind of a high-profile market for Legion. It took Legion Air Service Corporation and about 20 other entities to sit on one table in 2015 to bring that flight in. During the COVID pandemic, we lost it. But it came back on August 1st. Think about it. Mr. Griffin had mentioned the volatility of schedules. Beginning with August, Jet came us 2 to 3 times a week. They reduced down within August, once a week. Long Beach, from 4 to twice a week. So think about the volatility of schedules. Our line of sight is maybe 30 days, maybe 45 days out. So these are some of the things that we're working with, and it's very, very challenging. Southwest, they're trying to figure out what are the small markets, small pockets that they can leverage and try to bring some temporary revenue. So they added Seattle market. Unfortunately, it's not as profitable, as last airlines was doing as well. Oakland did return, yesterday, but unfortunately, they were scheduled to have again. 3 weeks back, they were scheduled to have 2 flights a day, now we have 1. All right. There's the. So this is what we all are getting into, the fall schedule. Post Labor Day, things are going to change. The airlines are significantly cutting capacity in the market. For real, what that means is, I'll give you an example of Southwest Airlines. In August, they're offering 17-day flights. In September, we have 8. We have never seen this before. We have never seen this before. This is very serious. Like I mentioned earlier, there are event cancellations. There are massive impact on cancellations of bookings and games schedules as well. October 1, no one knows what's going to happen. But we do know the limitations that were put on to airlines by the federal government are going to be lifted. So we're going to go back to transactional decisions, looking at the bottom line. What is making money for airlines? They're in it to make money too. So the CARES Act restrictions, of course, one is minimum level of service, that's one. Second thing is, think about the salaries and benefits that are taken care of by CARES Act. That 30% of expense is going to return. 30%. Right now we're looking at 40% load factor, right? They're still able to kind of break even with the 30% less expense with certain level of fare, which has significantly gone down, about 25%. Think about that expense coming back. With the current demand, they have to raise fares. When you raise fares, leisure traffic takes hit. And what we have right now is leisure traffic only. So please keep that in mind. November to mid-December is typically our very low one, looking at seasonality, looking at the product that we have, with the exception of Thanksgiving weekend. So naturally, November is traditionally the lowest month. So it's a perfect storm, post-Labor Day, October 1, and then November. So, good thing is for us, that mid-December, our flights start to come back. We have high demand in the market. We started to climb out. So even though the experts believe, some of the experts believe that the new normal is going to be declining mid-year next year sometime, and then we start to climb up, we have good opportunity in this region. We have excellent partners. We can claim on spec growth and start to climb from there. So there are a lot of things happening in the background that very few of us get to see. But let's see what we're doing in the region. Start with Green Tower Airport authorities, We Move You Safely campaign. Brian, thank you to your staff, everybody. You have gone above and beyond, one of the first airports in the market during the pandemic that had a campaign. We need to get the word out there. We need to let our people know that we're safe. We're very safe to travel through, and that's the key, the messaging. There are many other things that are happening in the pipeline. So we have a co-op plan, a co-op marketing program with American Airlines and Expedia, and RFCBA has been the front runner on that. So there are things in place that we don't know about yet. RFCBA also has a partnership with Southwest Airlines and Matador Media, and there's a video campaign that is being run in the Bay Area market. And then, of course, Southwest Airlines, on its own, because of the product that we have to offer, have a marketing campaign going on with a video, summer, how do you want that? Maybe we'll send out a link to the board later. And there are other things that we're working with Regional Air Service Corporation, Travel Nevada, Southern Territory, individual entities. Some of them are in the room right now, and some are probably listening. So what we're trying to say is, even though our eyes are maybe 30, 45 days out, we're working on the plan 3 months out, 6 months out, 18 months out. Thank you.
Question? Thanks, Ms. Song, for the report. Trustee Chaplin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hassan, tell me about your
hopes for the December winter season? Because my conversations with the ski resorts are pretty sketchy right now as far as what they can do coming back. And the propensity for the drive market to be driving farther, many as 800 miles as opposed to flying. I'm just wondering how you're seeing that play into this.
So, excellent question. Like I said, first I'm going to give out a little bit of caveat here. Anything beyond 45 days is reiteration. It's a very limited site that we have right now. But looking at ski, so we are already working with Alaska Airlines and Southwest Airlines to look at the ski schedule to explore some of the opportunities that we think that we could leverage on, some of the silver lining. And this is the time for us to come in and explore some of the things that we have not done, because aircraft are fun. So that's one. There are certain regions, for example, let's say Texas. We had a conversation with a large airline yesterday, specifically on ski in Texas. So maybe there is something I want to see later based on here, but this is good news in pipeline that you're going to hear. But then again, it's about 3 to 4 months out. The airlines do believe that folks are going to come out for skiing if Mother Nature gives us some snow.
Trustee Rose?
Well, my question is not directly for you, Respond. It is related to the information you just gave me. I'm just wondering if, not today, but at some point, if somebody could give an update on what Clear Channel is doing to the advertisers, because advertising is based on impressions. Your price that you pay is based on impressions, and our impressions are 75% less than what they were. And I just want to make sure that the airport is working with Clear Channel to make sure that they're working with our advertisers. Because I guess my fear would be that if the advertisers leave the airport when their contracts are up, they may or may not return later. Plus, we'll lose additional revenue that maybe we could have salvaged some portion thereof. So I've asked this question a couple of times, and I just really love to get a true update on what is Clear Channel doing for our advertisers, and what are we doing to make sure that Clear Channel is being effective in that. So it doesn't have to be answered today. I'm throwing it out there, and I'd like an update at some point. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Trustee Cortelli?
Thank you. What do you think, what do the airlines think you're going to see the angle of growth going up, starting to go higher and higher? I mean, probably after a year out there, 6 months out there, 18 months out there. Let's be realistic, it's not going to be in the near future.
So, Mr. Harrison, thanks so much. That crystal ball that you see, it does have a crack in it. That's the caveat there. So we have been on industry calls on a weekly basis, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week. One of the things that is consistent is looking at what the scenario on the fares is going to have. So with CARES Act implementations and impacts, fares is a big thing that is going to impact the leisure market. So that puts us about 6 months kind of beyond. So most of the experts believe the airline industry is going to be much smaller than what they were pre-COVID. Major airlines have parked their aircraft, and parking the aircraft is going to have some cost too. So it's a very delicate balancing act when to bring those things back and when to fly, and if things are in the market, if it's making money for them. So long story short, so the new normalcy, even the purchasing habits of passengers, some experts believe is going to be defined sometime mid-year, and that is when you start climbing from there, which in my opinion is probably going to be the size of 70 to 80% of the airline industry that we have currently in the U.S. domestic market.
But doesn't that also account for at what point in time you're going to have a vaccine? I would be getting a vaccine, the airline traffic increasing dramatically, but hand in hand with it. To me, that would be a triggering point that you start to the upswing.
There are many variables.
Any other questions from the board?
Madam Chair?
Trustee Perry?
I think one of our important things to be doing is communicating with our Washington delegation on the impact of the CARES Act on our airline industry. They're not interested in flying empty planes, but we need planes, and we need opportunities for people to travel. When we have an effective vaccine, we're going to need an airline industry that has the capability to respond to renewed demand. And I would like to see us look towards, at Darren's level and your level, beginning to work with our congressional delegation to lay out what's important for our region. We serve in an area of 130 miles in every direction, and we need to make sure we serve the markets of the ski industry, South Lake Tahoe, and Reno. Some scary numbers. Las Vegas has seen a 70% reduction in visitors, and gaming revenues are 50% less. So it's not something that we control, but it is something we need to be working with Washington to make sure that their original goal of making sure we didn't reach a point of failure is reached. We have the CARES Act. Our current plan is to extend that over about a 2-year period, and that's not going to be sufficient to maintain the inventory and the seats that are needed to move the Nevada economy forward. And I think it's a critical step that we all take as trustees to communicate with our cities and counties, because frankly, they're hurting. And sales taxes are down, businesses are closing. Your points on small business, trustee Rose, are right on. We've got a lot to do. And keeping the capacity of this airport is one of the key triggers to our recovery, because we're importing dollars. And I just want to encourage that we don't let what's currently occurring in Washington escape our opportunity to work with our Nevada delegation. They need to be responsible to the crisis we have, and I hope that we can all continue to move forward. And finally, I think that if airlines are going to be in this situation, we need to be a true partner with them on giving them an incentive to come here. Whatever capacity it is, there's capacity in our hotels and casinos, there's capacity in the beautiful region we serve, and it's a marketing program, continuing to say, we're here, we're open, those kinds of things. And we just happen to have a great marketing team led by Mr. Colton. So I think continued efforts in that area will go a long way to get some of our drive-by traffic, drive-through traffic that has us as a destination involved. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to bring that up. It's one of the things I want to do as chair, and did speak to the chair over at the RSPDA, the new chair over there. I want to have a joint meeting with them. I think it's absolutely essential, and I think Trustee Chaplin has brought this up as well. Tahoe is such a critical part of our region, and we also need to be forward-thinking during this crisis. I do also want to echo what Brian said about, and their whole campaign about we move you safely. And I think that that's the bottom line, is people, the safety of the airport, security of the airport, but the cleanliness of the planes, everything. I echo those sentiments, and I do think that joint meeting, I don't think they've ever had one, talking to the folks over there, as we plan, market, to our future, and also I think it gives us information on trend lines too, our gaming partners in particular, how important they are to our economy in this region, and our non-gaming hotels as well, and coordinating that. We've got to take a coordinated approach, also with our federal delegation. As a matter of fact, those CARES funds that are being distributed to the local governments can also be used to promote tourism. So just another reason to be working with our local partners on this, because that's going to be key as we're moving forward. And so thank you for that, board members. And Hassan, just one question that I didn't see on there, and again, it's cracking the crystal ball. And I know you just showed the August numbers, but our biggest passenger count of the year is Burning Man. And that's why I think another reason for our CEO is being proactive. I mean, not having that, our biggest passenger counts in the airport is from Burning Man, and between bowlers, Burning Man, holiday night, street vibrations just canceled, again, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, but I think we have to be proactive in this budget, because we're gonna see September, that event alone is gonna, I think, start really impacting, our numbers here at the airport, and, so that, I don't know, it's on how many passengers, I forgot what that count was, but refresh my memory on the Burning Man traffic numbers.
About 17,000, if Ryan, you have another number?
20,000. When you include what happens at the FBOs as well as inside the airport, it's 20,000 people arriving and 20,000 people departing over such a long period. Huge impact.
So what's our next closest event that's on to that, as far as passengers? Just the public watching, for everyone out there, what kind of impact that is?
That'd be sometime next year. We were hoping that with the postponed USBC would help us during the fall, but unfortunately, that's in March event. That's not just 2 or 3 days during a week. That's spread out across 2.5 months. That's a big chunk of bookings. As a matter of fact, Southwest Airlines called us on July 15th and asked us what is happening in Reno Tahoe. And we were struggling to figure it out, and then light bulb went off, and it was the USBC translation, and that's what we had to stop there.
And again, just for our tourism industry, it just goes to show you how much of an impact these special events are to our region, and continuing to be forward-thinking and bringing them into our region and how that affects our airport is going to be key in the future. So, so thank you, team, for the report. Vice Chair Terry.
Just one last thought. I don't think we need to be afraid of finding the bottom, what we think the lowest point is going to be in this, because what that allows you to do is build a staircase out of it and identify the steps that you take one step at a time to find your way out of that. So if we look at our budget, if we look at our passengers, we need to agree on what the bottom is, and then agree we're going to take actions so that we never reach that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there any public comment at this time?
Yeah, let me take a look here.
Okay, thank you.
I don't believe there is, finished.
Okay, all right, if there's no public comment, we are going to move on to presentations, and I still need, I think, the report from Mr. Brown. Update on public safety from Mike Brown. I think Lori is going to pass out his white paper to us.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Very much.
Thank you.
Words are making me nervous for you.
Rachel, you're followed.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, trustees, and our new CEO, Mr. Griffin. My name is Mike Brown. I'm a consultant with our partners. I've been working with the airport for almost a year now, on and off with your public safety issues, mainly with your ARC program and your fire services programs. What you have today before you is a white paper for the first page, and then a strengths and weaknesses on the services that are provided or potentially could be provided here at the Reno Tahoe International Airport. I started off with exactly how the board or how the airport works under the statute. The Airport Authority Act, creating the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority, Chapter 474 of the statute of the state of Nevada. Some of these refer all the way back to 1977. And I highlighted Section 10, the Authority General Powers. And you'll see highlighted in yellow, and I hope in your copies it is, where fire protection, police, crash rescue services are mentioned, and they're highlighted. There's been a lot of discussion about what of these services we actually provide, the defined services we provide. And so after that, I thought to make this simple for my brain, I went to Wikipedia, and I looked at the dictionary definitions on fire protection. And highlighted there that in event of emergencies, firefighters, fire investigators, and other fire prevention personnel are called to mitigate, investigate, and learn from the damage of a fire. So in a nutshell, on fire incidents here, there's a response that's initiated, firefighters go in, they do what their roles and responsibilities are, they extinguish, mitigate the incident, investigate the incident, learn from the incident, and go from there. Service delivery expectations. We talked about this early on, talked about this quite a bit with our personnel, talked about it with some of the leadership in the past as well. And service delivery expectations in the public safety arena are what we define as what the traveling public, the tenants, the visitors, and employees of the Reno Tahoe Airport have an expectation that if they are to experience an emergency incident that requires a response from the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority Fire Department or the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority Police Department, they will have the same level of public service response that they would receive at their home or community in which they reside. So for an example, I was there in the city of Reno. If I dial 911, I expect to get the services to mitigate my incident for the incident that's taking place, whether it's fire, a medical incident, or law enforcement incident. And so with that, those service delivery expectations are still the same here on your property because of the way you manage your community. And I define this as a community because of how things take place when people enter here, they go beyond that sterile field. It's very apparent that the Index C Part 139 crash and crash rescue standards have been adopted and are a requirement for the FAA for the standard set forth with the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority to operate and to support the size of the aircraft that it services. As explained above, fire protection considers several disciplines within the umbrella of what is normally referred to as all-risk services. All-risk services include not only the Index C 139 identification, but also emergency medical services, fire prevention and education, suppression of structure fires, vegetation fires, vehicle fires, appliance fires, confined space rescue, structural collapse rescue, high-low angle rescue, water rescue, hazardous materials, and then mitigation, bomb, terrorist threats, active shooter incidents, and numerous miscellaneous incidents that require mitigation. Now, not only the things that I provided, I'm going to go over a little bit of how we look at providing these services when it comes to time constraints within the public safety arena. Most agencies and services will adopt what they call their service delivery standards, which usually incorporate what I just mentioned. But along with that, we look at times. We look at times that are required to mitigate incidents of three types. The main one is an incipient phase of a fire. And what they mean by that is that if one of our offices here was to catch fire, and because of the fuel loading in that office, the sprinkler system wasn't able to extinguish that fire, and it grew unknown, just that we knew that we had a sprinkler activation, possibly alarm from the annunciator system, but it went undetected. It would take 4 to 6 minutes for a fire that size in what we call a room and contents fire to breach sheetrock and then exit that room and go throughout the entire building potentially. So 4 to 6 minutes for the incipient phase of a fire. In cardiac arrest, if we do not start CPR, do adequate ventilations, and get adequate care in 4 to 6 minutes, we receive irreversible brain death. It has been proven time and time again through the American Heart Association and the other centers that work on those types of issues. Major trauma and bleeding within trauma. If we have somebody that's losing a large volume of blood, if we don't stop that bleeding in 4 to 6 minutes, there's a potential we're not going to be able to resuscitate or keep that patient alive to get him to further care. So 4 to 6 minutes, that seems like a quick time. And it is. Nationally, it's 8 minutes for most of those types of times when you're looking at the service delivery models that are used throughout the nation. So that 4 to 6 minutes involves the receipt of call at a dispatch facility, the triage of that call, determining the call inputs, dispatching the call, the dispatch to the station, the response from the vehicle with the personnel in it, wheel stop, and then the time it takes to get them. 4 to 6 minutes is pretty quick. With an average of 8 minutes, it's even very quick. Has anybody ever used a 911 system before? I know the folks that have, because I've went on a lot of calls, and when you get there, the first question is, why did it take you so long to get here? Because time is clicking away on that emergency incident form. But we, as the providers of those services, need to look at what are our timeframes that we want to try to achieve that 4 to 6 minutes. What can we actually do? And there's a lot of factors that are involved in that. If we're looking at the all-risk firefighting, all-risk EMS, all-risk everything involved, we've got to try to establish, as CWE as an organization, what are times that we feel are acceptable for these responses and these responses that we're going to provide. So I don't know, I haven't been able to find an RTD benchmark on that, but you're not alone. A lot of services don't have those benchmarks. Trustee Carey and I worked for many years on the city side of things and have discussed this with our public safety agencies here locally. Some of them still haven't defined those. They do say they use that 8-minute benchmark because that's a national benchmark on what they can do. We've got an excellent EMS service here when it comes to our first responders throughout the area, as well as our transport agency, REMSA. And they look at that 8-minute response time and try to achieve that as much as they can, as many times as they can. So with that, I just wanted to give a little brief history on it. You know, I know on the 139 Index C standard, when they do the FAA testing, they have a time from when the engine actually leaves the station to when it arrives on scene and provides a wetting agent as well as an extinguishing agent is 4 minutes at your farthest end of the airport, depending on the size of your airports. So they set those times there for us to meet those standards when it comes to the FAA and when it takes place. But we also got to look at beyond that and what our standards should be when it comes to providing the services for the traveling public. On page 3, we start off with the analysis of the strengths and weaknesses. And the first one that is mentioned is the crash rescue index C 139 standard. You see I've got one column labeled strengths and the other is weaknesses. The strengths: fire stations within 10 years of being constructed, rather new. It's a great station. Has adequate storage for apparatus, equipment, retardants for incidents and events that require response throughout the RTAA response area. Is comfortable for the assigned personnel. The weakness of that station: the location of the fire station is questionable to maintain the allotted response times for the Index C response criteria. The station location is not conducive with the emergency response to the main terminal. Now, this is something we know, and potentially in the future could change with the growth of the airport. I've heard that, potentially the station could be moved because of some of the plans that's going to take place in the near to long-term future. But this is pointed out just because if we do respond to the terminal from there, we've got to pass over an active runway. That slows that response down. So during that 4 to 6 minute response we're trying to achieve, or that 8, that gets slowed in those response times because of our location of our station. But those are things that we can identify and try to work on later on in the future. We've got 6 firefighters assigned to each shift with a daily minimum of 5. We have enough staffing to maintain the Index C standard, but that's without the ability to initiate any type of interior rescue on any type of crash event. Our communications here: we have a strong communication program. That's our radio system. Radios are state-of-the-art and comply with the regional 800 megahertz shared radio system. We have adequate command and tactical channels. The radios are assigned to each firefighter. Our weakness when it comes to communications is that our air communications division, I call it our dispatch center, and I'm sorry if I call it from that time to time, but it's AirCom, is understaffed and is responsible for many air communication responsibilities that will overload the center with the most minimal of incidents. Lack of knowledge and training of the communication specialist to manage, respond, and log equipment, let alone provide the incident with enough monitoring of command channels and tactical channels, is a tremendous safety concern. Now, I gotta say, I've got to applaud the airport, the RTAA, and management, and recognize that they have brought on a communication specialist, as I call it, a manager, to start working on some of these incidents. Introduced this morning was Brent Finster. I've known Mr. Finster for several years, just through our networking. I was actually able to meet him this week in a meeting, and I think he did an excellent job bringing a supervisor in that could help take us to the future and meet some of these issues that we're actually talking about today. And so I'm very grateful that the airport recognized that they needed to get somebody in that position to continue the progression of looking at what we can do to improve upon that. So Mr. Finster was a great, like I say, addition to your team, there's no doubt. Also along with that, your CAT, you're implementing a new CAT system. And the Tyler system, I gotta say, after reviewing it, it's state of the art. And I think along with the CAD, along with Mr. Finster, along with work and everybody, we can see some great strides made towards taking care of our communication side of things to give them the tools and the education that they need and require to do their jobs. So I gotta say, some things are already in progress as additions to help make things, make improvements, drastic improvements here at the airport. So personnel are required to train as aircraft rescue our firefighters. The weakness on this is that over the years, we've had to send our personnel out to achieve this training, which is very costly. It creates overtime. Last year, I gotta say, the chiefs decided to try to bring the training here to see if we could actually have a cost savings, and we're still in the process of trying to figure out if that actually was a cost savings. But it just points out that a training facility, either on property or close to property, is something that they'd like to see, all of our personnel, but it also be very desirable, not only for our training of our folks, but bringing in other people to train with us, the agencies to potentially respond with us. Chief Officer and Incident Command. All firefighting staff are trained to the Incident Command position, IC, and that's how we do this in the public safety arena. Because if a firefighter was the first one on scene, he'd have to be that incident commander. Operators, captains, up to our chief officer. So when we talk about chief officer incident coverage, the airport for years has looked at our fire chiefs being that incident management coverage. Well, during the hours of 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the evening, they're here and they're able to respond. There's an expectation that chief officers will respond from home for these major incidents. Is that really realistic? It's very tough to do, especially when you only have one chief, and a deputy chief. So I just bring that up because supervision at the IT level on our incidents is a requirement on a lot of the NFPA requirements on incidents. So we have to look at how we're going to provide that in the future when it comes to our incident command procedures. And to take a firefighter, a captain, or an operator, and make them incident commander when you only have 5, and you've got an incident, you just take them out of that role where they're actually going in to help suppress that. And in our field, we call it, now you made a combative commander. And they don't have a full vision of what's going on once they're entering that structure, entering that area that's involved, and other things. So that becomes a safety issue as well. Our crash rescue fire apparatus, they meet the Index C criteria. But the current crash rescue fire equipment needs replacement. You have one ARP engine apparatus that's within 4 years of purchase. The other apparatus utilized to maintain that index meet the Index C, but it's older. And many of those pieces of equipment have unavailable parts, and we have to make them ourselves and have them made in other areas through machine shops and such to keep them in working capacity to meet that index on that. On page 4, emergency medical services. I got to say this airport does a very good job of low incidents when it comes to aircraft incidents. I was able to run the numbers for the last 5 years, and we're fortunate. We don't see a lot of aircraft incidents that require a large response, but that's not to say it's never going to happen because we have to plan for that to happen. Your biggest call volume here is your emergency medical services calls. The strength, your fire station again is equipped with the adequate storage for your medical supplies, apparatus is housed at a climate control facility. Again, the weakness on this is that the station location is not conducive with the emergent response to the main terminal. Again, there's a delay because they have to pass that active runway. You have outstanding community bystander AED programs here. Your AED program managed by the Marina Tahoe Airport Firefighter Department. You know what that is? Around your airport, you see automatic external defibrillators attached to the wall with enunciators on them. And it's something that we've tried to train for many years is that those are available for the lay use of the lay public. Several in here, I'm sure, have had CPR and AED courses. If you were to see an event take place requiring the usage of those AEDs, you can remove them from the walls, you can apply them to the patient, and hopefully have a successful outcome. Now, I was real proud of your 2 individuals that received your award there for taking the initiation to recognize it was a problem, to remove the person, place them in a position where they could actually start the resuscitative activities that they did. And that's just the same we're asking the general public and our employees here with the AEDs that we have throughout your airport. And so I got to say, the airport's got to be applauded for that because it's been in the work for many, many years and it's been a success. Communications, again, your radios are state-of-the-art and they comply with the regional system, shared radio system. You got, again, adequate command channels and radios assigned to each one of your firefighters. Your weakness here, though, is your communications, communications is understaffed and is responsible for many air communication responsibilities. The ability to triage, initiate response is below the standards of the emergency medical dispatch arena. You got a state certified EMS provider, your program here. So what that means is that you're providing EMS at the basic life support level, EMT basics. You're state certified and state permitted. And so that is right in conjunction with several other of the agencies. This is the level of services at the basic, and I'm going to talk about that as well. Along with that, you have a records management system. It's compliant with the National Emergency Medical Reporting Systems and NEMESIS program. And that's a criteria that you have to maintain once you become a state-permitted organization with the state of Nevada. The RTAAFD is a member of the Washoe County Shared Medical Protocols. So throughout the area, all agencies that provide first response and the transporting agency share our medical protocols to keep us all on the same protocol setting when it comes to service delivery to the citizens of the communities here in northern Nevada. We're a member of that committee at the basic life support level, and I gotta say, it's nice to see that emblem along with Reno Fire Department, Sparks Fire Department, North Lake Tahoe, the Guard, as well as one of our ski areas, Mount Rose Ski Area. Personnel are required to maintain a minimum of the emergency medical technician basic. Currently, personnel at higher level of emergency technician certification. You've got 7 advanced emergency medical technicians and 2 paramedic level healthcare providers that work here at the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority. The weaknesses, currently, emergency medical technician basic is a level service that can be provided. The ability to render care at the basic level is inadequate compared to the neighboring fire department agencies. The services to the customers and employees of the RTAA are not providing higher level EMS coverage, and the suggestion would be to start exploring EMT advanced. And I say,
can you just elaborate for the board? I know what that means, but can you explain the difference? Because this is important, I think, the EMT advanced and the EMT basics, on what our firefighters can actually provide now with just basic and advanced. Because I'm not sure everyone understands the difference with the two.
You're right. And so at the EMT basic, they're able to provide bandaging, C-spine, application of AEDs, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, oxygen, and that's about it at that level. Almost all the agencies throughout the area are providing advanced life support services permitted to the state of Nevada, if not paramedic first response services. Now, I mentioned earlier that we've got an excellent EMS system when it comes to our ambulance transport capabilities with REMSA to be our provider. We work very closely with them here at the airport. But with all instances, there do happen to be times when transport services can be limited because of what's taking place throughout Washoe County. So with that, their core is to try to get to everything in 8 minutes. But at times, those ambulances can be tied up on other types of incidents. And with that, if we were on scene with somebody that we could actually provide a higher level, I'll use an example, anaphylaxis of allergy. You know, we have folks we know that have peanut allergies, bee sting allergies, you name it. Well, some of those folks can have severe allergies to where it actually closes off their airway. And without the proper medicine and the proper utilizing of medicines, you can't reverse that. And as a basic life support provider, all you can do is basic life support skills. Once they go unconscious, they stop breathing, you ventilate them. Once they need cardiopulmonary resuscitation, you give it to them. Epinephrine is a drug that we use in the field. It's a very active drug that reacts very well to anaphylaxis type issues. It's an EMT advanced skill. It's something that our EMT advanced, our paramedic folks can actually provide. EpiPens is another skill that they can provide. People actually have them themselves. Now, as a basic provider, if somebody does have an EpiPen and they know how to self-administer it, we can assist them with that self-administration. But we should be able to have those skills at our ability and our levels of care. So that's why, you know, in the future, we should explore increasing our level of care. And it's just not only in anaphylaxis, there's several other areas where EMT advanced can actually provide services that actually could render a better service to the traveling customers. And it's equal to what we have. It's equal to what our providers are in our neighboring locations are providing as well.
One thing is that, if I may, you see any downsides to train all of our first responders to be advanced responders?
No. This is something that your staff here would like to provide. They know it's going to be a higher level of education. It's going to be a higher level of knowledge for each one of them. They know it's the next step in the process. I do have in here that it's actually supported by your medical director. In order to be a licensed service through the state of Nevada, you have to have medical direction by an emergency room physician or a certified ER doctor. Your physician you've had on record and now his son have both encouraged the airport to take this step for many years, just because of what we're experiencing with the neighboring agencies and their ability to provide these services. So that's a great question in there, Councilman. Right.
Yeah. For everyone's knowledge, I was a former advanced EMT many years ago. There is no reason we shouldn't be providing these services here in the area. Keith Brown has already made it.
One of the other weaknesses along with this is that the equipment needs to be updated and or replaced. The cardiac monitoring, the EEG, non-invasive, blood pressure, pulse oximetry, these are just the equipment that we can get to utilize these services at that level, and still also at the basic life support levels, we at least would stay at that. And then the primary response apparatus, the fire engine, needs to be replaced, and need to have immediately in there. This vehicle responded to 87% of the calls over all the other apparatus. Now, I know that there is processes to replace their current fire engine, and I do just want to point out, thank you very much to the board for ensuring that the funds were put together to make that happen this fiscal year. In order to provide these services, you need to have equipment that can get there and provide the water, the people, and the equipment, and we got to make sure it gets there in the time that's allotted, and everything else is involved with that. So thank you very much. Moving on to page 5, fire prevention and education. So the strengths. You got a healthy working relationship with the city of Reno Fire Marshal and Prevention Program. He does all your plan reviews for your new and some of your upcoming construction. The weakness is that the RTEAFD prevention program has not adopted or recognized codes to utilize for the inspection program outside of what they provided the fuel for. So we need to see what actual minimum codes we would like to utilize for our inspection processes here. And there's been a lot of discussions with our current fire chiefs and management here. It's something as simple as to say we're going to do the basics of what the state fire marshal utilizes or what the city of Reno utilizes, because they do our initial plan checks. And we can work on that more and discuss it more too later on.
Mike, can I just follow up on that too, because that's important as part of the presentation, because our building's majority of our property is located inside of the city of Reno's jurisdiction. Why don't we just be adopting their code? Because don't we have to be in compliance with city code? So I just want you to, and I know we brought this up last time as far as the inspections, which are very, very important. So what is your actual recommendation? I understand the bare minimum with the state, but don't we need to be in compliance with city code?
And Chairwoman, thank you very much, because the way state law reads is that you can adopt the minimum of the state fire marshal's fire code or exceed, and the city of Reno does exceed. So that's why it would be advantageous just to adopt their codes, because their exceed areas, some of those areas wouldn't apply to us, but yet some of them will. So we want to be uniform, and we should be concurrent with what they're doing, because I could potentially see, and I've had it happen in the jurisdictions I worked before, they say, well, Reno doesn't require that, why are you? Or why are you requiring this and Reno doesn't? And so that's why it would be advantageous to have the same code adoption the city of Reno currently has.
And then just a follow-up on that, because there are mutual aid and automatic aid partners right now. So isn't that part of the requirement and part of those agreements that we have those codes adopted as they're our partnering responding agencies?
I think it's not actually written into your mutual aid agreement or automatic agreements in that fashion, but it makes sense. To follow their codes, because if they're responding with us, let's utilize, fire hydrants. If we don't have fire hydrants that are placed on our airport that meet their threat standard, and they come in to hook to one of our fire hydrants, then, they're useless to us until they get an adapter off of ours. And that currently takes place at the city of Reno and our neighboring jurisdictions. So, those are areas that, you're right, if we do adopt, and then they're making a recommendation exactly how our plan checks are going for those construction jobs that are taking place on the airport, is another good reason why we should. So, moving along, RTAA maintenance and engineering have knowledge and proficient staff to ensure initial prevention review and screening of new and current buildings and improvements. So you do have staff members in your maintenance division here that do have the certifications, that do work closely with the city of Renton, they do a phenomenal job. The RTAA Fire Department, though, personnel lack the education and certificates for fire prevention. So no prevention certified personnel are on staff. And that's something that we are working on to achieve, is try to get them the training, the knowledge, and the understanding. And that's easily done through the state fire marshal's office, and those are some of the plans we have in the future to try to clean some of these issues up. And you don't have any supervisory personnel at the fire department that can actually oversee your prevention program. The fire chief position is a catch-all position. You get it all. But with that, that's why we need to have personnel that actually specialize in these areas to where they can actually oversee prevention, not only for the shift that's on, but the shift that's on every day, so that everybody's receiving the same training, the same knowledge, and the same understanding of how the inspection processes work.
Mike, I'm sorry, just following up on that, because City of Renton, you have the building familiarization program. So why would we have our firefighters trained, inspecting, random inspections? Because if a fire occurs, you want familiarization with those buildings. So is there a scenario where you're training our firefighters to also be inspectors as well?
Exactly, and thank you, Chair Barraza. So that familiarization program is utilized by a lot of agencies throughout the region, throughout the nation. What that is also referred to as pre-planning. So we send our companies, we send them out with the chief officers, with the captains, and we have them go through the structure so they identify all the hazards that can actually be stored in there. But they also take a good cursory look to ensure that the building meets the certification processes as far as their sprinkler system goes, enunciation panels go, their fire department couplings, which are their FDCs, where they're located, where the Knox boxes are located, everything along with that we might do if we were going out as a prevention officer to do on a yearly check. But having our personnel go out there on a regular basis makes them more familiar with that building, more familiar with what's going to be occupied in that building. And then if they do get that call at 2 o'clock in the morning, they pull up, they're going to go, I remember last time over here, we had this type of issue taking place. The guys were not going to use this entrance, let's use the back entrance, things like that. But as an area of familiarization, you're right. We're not calling it fire prevention inspections, we do it familiarization inspections. And along with that, we're able to see that the prevention things are being met. And that comes to that training on the prevention side of things, so it's a great point making. So then, as far as education program and members of the RTAFD have a highly trained personnel who provide education when asked. And this is the public education side of it. I gotta say, they're very eager to get out throughout your community here and provide education. Whether it be setting up a table that's located in the passenger entry or exit with pamphlets on what to take place, or educating the on-site staff in AED utilization, CPR, triage, trauma, everything that goes along with it, and they've done a phenomenal job with that. So you have some good pluses there when it comes to that. And then your records management system. Your RMS system is a state-of-the-art system. It's a Zoll system. The airport purchased it a few years back because we were lacking in that area. They identified that, they made the purchase, and I gotta say, thank you to the IT department because they're instrumental in getting this up and operational and continue to make this program work. This is where the INFIRS program comes in, the National Fire Incident Reporting System. We're required by law, by federal and state law, to report on all of our incidents that are utilized for the public safety owners on the fire side of things. And there's a whole list of them, but they involve everything from structure fire to vehicle fires, everything I mentioned in the all-risk side, as well as our EMS responses, and those have to be on a quarterly basis. We're going to talk a little bit later about grants. That's also part of the requirement to qualify for grants through the federal government when it comes to personnel, purchasing, safety, prevention, and everything else. Airport's compliant on that. They weren't compliant as of last year, but we have actually been able to go ahead and submit the last 3 quarters of reports, and the federal government INFIRS has recognized us as being a compliant organization and fire department. So again, thank you to the leadership of this organization for helping us get that straightened out and get it moving in a progressive manner. Now we go on to page 6 with the all-risk fire services. Our strengths, again, the fire station equipment, adequate for storage of the apparatus, equipment, housing, and personnel. Again, I'm not going to beat it to death. The weaknesses is where we're located. Try to meet those time constraints for these emergencies. Again, it slows us down by going over an active runway. That's something we're just gonna have to work on. It's there. It's something we've got to accept. We've got to see how we can, conquer it. We've got state-of-the-art turnouts with all the required safety equipment assigned to each firefighter. Weakness on this is our incident alerting system is deficient. So this is where before and currently, we utilize the telephones with our air communication centers to notify us of emergency incidents. And these just aren't incidents relating to aircraft, to where the tower would actually call them and the fire department to notify them of an airport incident. These are our EMS calls, our trash can fire calls, our vehicle accidents, everything that has to do with the request from assistance from the traveling public. That goes through our phone system, either by the 7-digit number with the ending of 69999, or a transfer from our public safety answering points, whether it be Sparks, Reno, or Washington County, to the 911 system.
Mike, and let me tell you what, so are you telling me people are still using that 699 number instead of 911? Because we've had this issue, it's been forwarded several times. So I would like to know the answer to that.
Well, I haven't been here to the airport, actually go out and, look and see if that's still on the phones and everything else. I do believe, though, there are some areas that are utilizing that number for their communications, for their emergency or non-emergent incidents through the aircom situation. But again, I gotta say, with the hiring of your communication manager and looking at the system, along with the incorporation of your CAD system, potentially I could see some changes coming on how that will take place. I know that our IT folks understand some of the situations with that. There's gonna be some FCC changes coming up in 2021 to require our phone system to be actually able to identify where you're calling from within a structure, not just a voice over IP anymore, showing one physical address. It's going to show the actual address or location of where you're calling from. And these have to do with public service issues that have transpired throughout, not only here in Reno, but throughout the nation when trying to identify where somebody's at. I know I see our trustee Jerry smiling back there because our PSAPs, our public safety answering points, utilize what's called an anti-alley system, that when you dial 911, it effectively gives you your location, your phone number, and everything over that CAD system. And we don't have those capabilities here now, but I can see that potentially coming in the future with the changes that are potentially coming up, especially the FCC and such. Did that help to answer that question, Sherilyn?
Yes, and I appreciate that because these are important issues, and I think it goes back to what Trustee Rose said before. I'd like some of these measures, and I'll look at obviously finishing the report, but I think we got to act on this stuff immediately. I mean, we should be having people call 911 for emergency medical. In no circumstance should it be put through the 699 system. It's a delay of response. And as you discussed earlier before, every minute in responding to a medical emergency is time, and life-saving time. So I appreciate you bringing that forward.
And to dovetail off those discussions, currently the Z-Tron system is being installed at this fire station. Again, I gotta say thank you to the IT management for recognizing us, but also Art Brent, who's one of the IT specialists over there, who's working very hard to get this installed within our station. And what this is for several years we've utilized the telephone, as I mentioned, to regain our information from Aircom on what's taking place throughout the airport when there's a request for any type of emergency. It slows the processes down. It required a firefighter or personnel at the fire station to monitor the phones 24/7. If they're out on the floor, they'd have to run to answer the phone. There was all types of instances that would slow it down. Ironically, when the station was built, it was built with an overhead annunciation system that opens up with the utilization of what we're calling the Z-Tron system that the airport has purchased. What Z-Tron does, it works off of the consoles in Aircom through the radio system to activate and open up the airwaves in the station, turn on the lights, put off tones, wake them up if they're sleeping, make them recognize that they have a call if they're working throughout the station, but also to initiate that response in a faster manner than what we've had in the past. They had to expend funds to make this happen. They saw that it was something that was needed to get the tools to do the job for our personnel. And I was privy to a week ago being there when they set the tones off in the station and everything's functioned. It was audible. It worked very well. A lot of the firefighters were in total awe And now the next process of that is getting the components put in and aircon, which should happen within the next week and a half. You know, I applaud again our IT program and management, but also want to say thank you out to Washoe County Regional Radio Shared System and their IT department, because they've allowed us to have Mark Downing come over, do the programming and assist us with getting this up and running. And it's not only going to be an advantage for the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority, but also for the Navy and the Brent Air National Guard as part of this as well. So that will assist us with utilizing them on the incidents in the future, but also being able to open their airways when we do have these incidents and tell them over the air before they get into their apparatus where we need them and how we're going to need them. So this is a great, I gotta say, move going forward with what's taking place here at the airport. So the turnout, I mentioned, respiratory protection plan is sufficient. The self-contained breathing apparatus is adequate and meets the standards of our mutual aid and automatic aid partners. Part of the problem with that is incident commander and a chief officer is pretty much non-existent on our incidents, unless it happens between the hours of 8 and 1700 or 5 o'clock. So when we look at the all-risk side of things, again, we're asking our firefighters, captains, and operators to be that IC on those incidents. It takes it away from other responsibilities to mitigate that incident. Our communications, again, radios are state-of-the-art, 800 system, shared radio system, and we have adequate command tactical channels. Radios are assigned to each firefighter. The weakness, again, comes back to air communications. Communications, again, is understaffed and is responsible for many air communication responsibilities. And what I mean by that is that they have so many things going on in the air communications division. It's not their fault that they can't put their total focus on that incident. We've assigned so many other duties to them. Those air communication specialists are watching cameras, they're watching monitors, they're answering telephones, especially after certain hours here when there can only be one or two of them. So there's a big responsibility put on them, but it puts a big safety issue on our first responders, not having them dedicated to what's taking place on that incident. And it's a big safety incident. All firefighters are required to have firefighter 1 and 2. So there's been discussions. If we respond firefighters, are our personnel trained to do that? Well, that's a minimum level of training that's required to be a firefighter here at the airport fire department. Firefighter 1 and 2 is actually accepted throughout the states. If you go through a fire academy, you come out with your firefighter 1 and 2. They require their firefighters to have that coming into the position or to gain it afterwards at certain times. The Gaming Records Management System is compliant with the inference reporting system that I mentioned earlier. Your current and adequate updated accountability system. Accountability is something that we do on every incident. If we have an incident, you have an accountability tag that you utilize to put to the safety officer or the incident commander. They will then have accountability on the entire incident. If we have an agency respond in with us, Reno Fire Department, they have an accountability system that mirrors what we do here. We mirror what the city of Sparks does. Sparks mirrors what the city, Truckee Meadows Fire, Reno, North Lake Tahoe. We all do the same thing so that we can cooperate together. So we have things in place so we actually can coordinate our incidents here, and we're a participant in that. And I gotta say, everybody here is current and updated on that accountability system. So we meet or exceed our neighboring agencies. The weaknesses, inadequate staffing for required safety officers to be assigned to each incident. So each working incident requires not only an incident commander, but we should have a safety officer assigned to make sure, safety officer to ensure everything's done in a safe and efficient manner. How do we get around that? That IC, he has that responsibility until he can actually pass it on to somebody else. So again, it's a staffing issue, and I really didn't get into staffing too much on this, because of our current COVID situation and such situations that everybody's experiencing. So we have to find a workaround how we can change this and how we can make improvements in the future. And then last on this, the current fire engine needs immediate replacement. The engine assigned structure response is going to have the capability to provide the adequate water supply and suppression of the structure and other fires requiring large water flows, and this is a safety issue. But again, there's things in process. We're actually purchasing an engine that will be adequate for many years to provide these services when it comes to providing water to our fires, our personnel to our emergency incidents, and equipment to those incidents as well. On page 7. So this document here, I didn't produce. I put this in the packet. As I was putting it together, I came across this. This was actually provided to me from one of the members of the Reno Tahoe Airport Fire Department early on when I started working here last year. This individual is a firefighter. He's not a very boisterous individual. He keeps his head down, does his work, and when you ask him a question, he gives you a clear answer. But he provided this to me, and he said he puts it together with input from his peers at the fire department. This is SWOT analysis. And I'm going to go over the strengths really quickly with you, because you can see a lot of them correlate with what we have here, and then the weaknesses do as well. And I didn't get this from them in a manner that I asked them to just provided it to me early on. But I'm going to show you that these folks are thinking about this. They're dedicated. They're looking at what they can do to make improvements and help the system to improve. And when you look at their strengths, they have extensive knowledge and experience in the fire service. EMS, incident command, wildland fires, structural rescue, hazmat, mass casualty incidents, or MCIs, ARS, airport rescue firefighting, and confined space. The next bullet, public service, structural alarms, aircraft incidents, EMS, hazmat, confined space, vehicle accidents, fuel spills, public education, in-house education. I won't go through all of them, but there's a lot of them that have to do with EMS and other areas where they provide these services. Fire prevention, inspecting aircraft fueling facilities and vehicles for FAA directives. So they do have a lot of experience with our tank farm, as well as those pieces of equipment to provide that fueling to the aircraft. Maintain records and prepare reports, assist in clearing disabled aircraft and runways, disarm military ejection seats. All personnel are qualified to act at a higher position. Line staff desire to progress the fire department and provide a safer environment for our community. The firehouse is certainly located in the city of Reno to assist with mutual aid parties. Passion and desire for the fire service, knowledge and response area. Highly involved in the local and state IASF, which is a huge resource for networking in the fire service. Physical fitness. Annual physical require personnel to be in top health and physical shape to perform their duties. Required to perform all job duties in harsh conditions. Cleaning and maintenance of apparatus, equipment, and facilities. So those are strengths. When you look at the weaknesses they provided, it's a lack of progression with the rest of the fire services in our valley, not providing the expected level of service for EMS, structure, rescue, dispatch communications, and wildland, not responding to our own incidents or sending appropriate, if any, response to mutual aid requests, practical hands-on training, no training, ground equipment mock-ups, FAA saturated training, prevention, no standard or formal training, outdated SOPs or SOGs to keep up with the current trends in the fire service, response apparatus or QFE type 1 engine, training in mutual aid departments, mutual aid expectations, lack of leadership, higher level of command, dispatch communication, alert notification, organization, mission requirements, and staffing is what they've identified as their weaknesses. On the back side of page number 8, opportunities. They feel that access to grant funding and other programs to aid the progression of the level of service and provide proper equipment. Increase the EMS level, staffing levels. Update the SOPs and the SOGs. Define who we are, what we do, and how we do it. Develop an accessible training ground with applicable training products. Hazmat triad, that's the triad that's utilized by all the neighboring agencies. They feel they should be a participant in that because of our hazmat incidents here. Promotions, wildland fire, and that'd be wildland fire response and mitigation. But their threats, our current capabilities are easily overwhelmed by our minor incidents. Assuming things that haven't happened won't happen. Mutual aid partners are unfamiliar with our target hazards for ARF, bombs, sea burn, active shooter cases, access above our span of control, job security, lack of training facility, and inadequate apparatus. So that's the end of my report, and I sure would like to take any questions they have. And I just would like to say that, I've told you this before, being associated with this airport has really provided me with a wealth of knowledge. Airport has a lot of moving parts here, more than some local jurisdictions have, that's for sure. The staff here has been instrumental in educating me, and I appreciate it, and I want to thank them. I had the opportunity to meet with the new CEO this week, Mr. Griffin, and I gotta say it was very much a pleasure to meet with him and spend the time that I did. You did the right thing. You got a good person here who I think is gonna take this airport a long way for many, many more years if we can keep him around. But I want to thank you for allowing me the time with him, and then the allowing time to put this together. I wish I could have got this earlier. I wish I could have done more face-to-face time with the members of the trustees that were on our team. COVID hit, And that changed everything, as it's still doing in our lives today, that's for sure. But I want to say thank you very much.
And before we can begin, I do want to say some things. First I want to thank the board. Some of these things we've acted on, the fire truck, the alert system. I think it's been a top priority for the whole board, and I want to say thank you to the board for making this a top priority. And I also want to thank Mr. Brown. We asked him to come in, give us an unfiltered assessment of our fire department, and that's what he did, just that, because we needed the knowledge on the things. I appreciate you coming in, telling us the things we're getting well, and some of the things that we need improvement on. And thirdly, I do want to thank our new CEO, who I think has been on the job for just over 2 weeks, who's really hit the ground running on this issue, on public safety overall, and already, I think, spending time with Mike, certainly keeping us apprised of, and I know this is a top priority for him as well, so just want to thank everyone for all their efforts, and open it up to questions. Trustee Jay.
Yeah, Ms. Brown, thank you. That was a great report. It's really eye-opening. Two themes seem to be central throughout the whole thing. One, the communications, and it looks like maybe we're heading in the right direction with new staff, training, things like that. But the other one that really gets me is that station location not conducive with the emergent responses to main terminal. And it's a fairly new station, so, and I know we probably can't answer for rhetorical, why did we build it there? What was, planned there? And secondly, how critical is that to moving it? Is it something that, my God, we need to do it now, or is it something that we can do later? Kind of put that in a priority for me, if you would, please. Thank you.
Well, and a great question. First off, I can't tell you why it was put there.
Right, none of us can, but.
I wasn't here, I can't say that, I've been in this area since 1979. I provided training and worked out of your station that is now a maintenance facility. That was an excellent spot for a fire station because it was central location to everything, what was taking place. I could just theorize that with these future expansions of the airport and what's going to be taking place over the plans in the future, that's why the station was moved. And I don't know if there was more plans to change what activities take place on the runways and right. I don't know that. Is that something that we can work with? Yes. We can come up with plans on how we can efficiently, now that we get to the calls in a manner that's a shorter time period, to maybe notify so we can get clearance to go across the runways in a more efficient manner. That takes, planning, and it takes planning with our operations team and such to try to find releases and relief on how we can get there in a more expedient manner.
Are you saying we need to move it, or are you saying we can, okay?
Yeah. I gotta say, early on when I came on, I heard there was plans potentially for relocating the fire station with some of the expansions that were gonna take place here at the airport. And I got me ready, because I thought, wow, that's a rather new fire station that's built there, and now you're talking about moving it. So I don't know, the future planning of what's taking place, but that's something that should be considered, with any future planning that's going on. And I call this master planning and such, and that's something that, that's the decision of the airport, the management, and things need to look at for what they're going to do later on with locations.
Do we have, sorry, one more question. Do we have personnel that are stationed within the airport right here, right now, that if something happened, rather than being called from over there, can we create a substation to have people in-house right now? So if they get a call, they can be there within minutes, rather than having to theoretically drive over. I mean, to me, that kind of makes sense. What am I missing?
Currently, no, but that has been discussed. And within the last year, there have been plans and discussions just on that, actually locating staff here that can be utilized for that emergent response of any type. And so those discussions are taking place.
That seems fairly cheap to do, because, I mean, I'm sure we have room somewhere around here.
So you'd have to have more staffing, I'm assuming. So I'm not sure it is that cheap to do.
Okay, well, that's what I'm wondering,
But that's in the planning and the discussion phase, there's no doubt about that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, can I answer that question as well? So obviously, I don't know the history here, sir, but typically what happens is airport fire stations are located with a single objective in mind, which is their proximity to the furthest point of a runway. They're there for the aircraft, and like Chief Brown mentioned, from the initiation of an Alert 3, which is an aircraft accident, that fire station has 3 minutes to get to that aircraft. And so when the airport fire stations are being sited on airfields, they don't take into account a lot of what Chief Brown has talked about in terms of responses to landside locations, the terminal building. I can tell you we had 1,000 alerts at PDX and 3,000 medical calls, and we still don't have EMTs inside the terminal building. This is the debate that goes on at every airport. I've got good friends in the industry, and it takes away from the response to the aircraft if you have two people or one person stationed in the terminal building to deal with that medical or whatever it is. So there's a natural tension there, but there's, as Chief has mentioned, many instances where that's where most of the calls are, and it doesn't inherently make sense that they're coming across an active runway, which the FAA also doesn't like. These problems are very normal, and like Chief said, there's good workarounds that we'll have to look at because it's really difficult and really expensive to move a fire station, and the FAA is the ultimate controlling entity on that location.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Insight.
Trustee Rose. So I see a lot of strengths on here, which makes me super happy. I also really appreciate you acknowledging that over the last year and a half that we've made progress, and the whole team at the airport has worked really hard on this, and I'm glad to see that we've made some good ground. The list of weaknesses seems overwhelming and cannot obviously be accomplished in one day. So I'm just wondering if what you're planning to do is provide us with a list of priorities from top down on these. Is that something we can ask of from you?
Yes, thank you, and I like that question. And, you know, I hope the plan is to continue to work with our CEO and his staff and management to prioritize these areas, take the low-hanging fruit that we can take care of, but also have plans in the future for how we can make these possible. We're in uncharted times, there's no doubt about it. And we're not the only ones that are feeling this crunch. You guys know that better than I do. You know, when you look at it, we're going to have to do a lot of planning. And I know our new CEO and I discussed that because, you know, it's not just affecting our public service activities, it's also affecting our neighboring public service activities that potentially could be responding to incidents from the bus here. And so we have to be self-sufficient in some matters because they may not be able to come. They're decreasing staffing, they're browning out stations, they're closing engines down. And this is a trend that we're seeing across the nation just because of our financial status we're in. And the impact that Corona is having on our personnel. That's eating up a lot of our staff members in the public safety arena because of our close proximity that we have to cohabitate. One person gets it, and then we transfer it to the rest of the people in that station, and you lose a whole shift of personnel, and it can put you out of business. So, yeah, there's a great suggestion. Prioritize this and see what we can take care of first, and then what we need to plan for in the future.
That leads to question two, sorry. No problem. Have we made, just out of sheer curiosity, adjustments within the areas where our first responders live? Have we made adjustments for social distancing and barriers and those types of things?
Yeah, I know that that's been part of their plan. I haven't been privy, but we have discussed it. If you enter the firehouse right now, your temperature's checked in or checked off, everything's done like that, the masks are provided, and then those members of those teams have their processes that they have to go through after every incident, and also while they're cohabitating.
Trustee Rose, did you have any other questions? No, thank you. Okay, Trustee Caroselli?
Chief Brown, thank you very much for the comprehensive report. Really appreciate it.
I have several questions, and thanks again, Mike. On the SOPs, because this is standard operating procedures, this really stuck out to me in the report, and we discussed this at the board level before. Where are we? I mean, these are the procedures and protocols that our public safety personnel have to live by in order to respond. If something they need, they're outdated. Where are we on getting the SOP, the current SOP, put into place? And what is, I'm going to be kind of frank here, call the elephant out in the room, what is the holdup?
That's a difficult answer for me because I have not been involved with that process since I started this. Prior to, though, I can say the SOPs had not been reviewed for many years. They were in the process of review. They were actually reviewed and redlined and provided to the current administration to go further with that. And that's where it was left when I left in December.
Okay, so did you make some recommendations on those, standard operating procedures? And those have been redlined, so they just need to be put into place?
Correct.
Okay, and then I saw in the report, I don't know what an SOG is. We have all this terminology, can you tell me what a SOG is?
Standard operating procedures are your SOPs and standard operating guidelines.
Okay, standard
An
operating.
SOP is like you shall, a guideline is more generic. So you can use your guidelines to actually waive from the guideline if you have to for your incidents, whereas the policy is a policy.
Okay, and then on our equipment, and I think this goes back to what Trustee Rose has brought up, and put into a capital improvement plan, and some of this stuff, this is, I mean, I think it like this overnight, so it's going to take some time to implement. And I guess I would like to see, you know, your outside consultant on this, prioritizing what needs to be done, like at the get-go, we need the SOPs, but also our equipment. There's some failures in our equipment, just pumping water. Where are we? I know we're replacing the fire engine. Where are we on our other equipment, to make sure that it's operational within the department?
So early on, safety was a big focus in the beginning when I started last May. And we wanted to ensure we were being safe by everything we provide to our employees, our firefighters, and in turn to the community and the public. So we were looking at assessments of our equipment. Fire trucks are required to be pump tested on a yearly basis. So we were in process of getting the pump test completed. It has not been yet completed at this time. Pump tests allow us to ensure that we can deliver adequate water, adequate foam, adequate levels of pressure, everything along with that. You know, usually a third evaluator, party evaluator that come in to do that. I did see a memo or an email the other day that has been ordered up, and it's in the process of taking place hopefully soon. They're getting it scheduled, and that was a scheduling email that I saw coming forward on that. Along with that, your ladders have to be tested on a yearly basis. We did get our ladders tested last year, and they'll be going through tests this year. So those are safety issues that come up. I discussed some of these issues. It's also customary in the industry to have a third-party evaluator take a look at your integrity of your equipment when it comes to what we call a DOT inspection. And it's usually a third party comes in, Department of Transportation inspection, and they make sure that everything on that is, that's required, that it's safe to be on the roadways, to be on your runways, and it's operated in an efficient manner. So we talked about some of these incidents and things that are coming up. And these are new to the airport. You know, these are things that are customary in the industry, but again, they haven't been recognized here because I'll just be honest, it was the high incident of meeting that 139 Index C standard and not looking at the overall picture of that all risk standards that we have out there when it comes to providing these services. So a lot of this stuff is in process, especially when it comes to the pump testing, the ladder testing, and things that are going to take place here in the near future.
And then, Mike, I think one of the questions too that I have, and this was brought up by Trustee Carey on another item, is we actually have very good coordination with our firefighters and our federal delegation. And we've been able to secure a lot of grants at this airport for our runways, for all kinds of our towers, all of that. On some of this equipment and also the SAFER grant, I mean, in potentially the VCs, I know you brought that before at another level, another board. Where are we, and are we looking at, have there been some recommendations on these grants? Because there's quite a few of them, and I think some of my frustration's been, that is where our congressional delegation's been fabulous, and maybe something to talk about in our next agenda item with Congressman Porter. But can we coordinate immediately on some of those SAFER grants? Because we are in budgetary constraints right now. Those grants can be very helpful as far as personnel and equipment. Do you see some opportunities there for this board to move forward with that?
Yes, and again, another perfect question for what is taking place these days. So the SAFER grant program through the federal government has to do with public safety grants that are provided for equipment, education, prevention, and personnel. Currently, you have submitted a grant, the airport has submitted a grant for equipment for a fire engine. I don't know the status of that grant, but I did see that go through. It was prepared by Chief Tongate and other members, and they did a good job on writing that grant. But I'm not sure, of all the components of that grant were maintained within it before it was submitted. Then when it comes to the SAFER grant for personnel, you did submit a grant potentially for the 3 positions of 3 battalion chiefs to help out with some of your chief officer and leadership issues. I did see a letter of support that was going back to our congressional delegates. It was written by the prior administration that they asked for support of that grant. And currently, I'm not sure where that grant's at in the process. I've been watching that grant on the website, and they haven't started awarding a lot of those yet. They have on the engine grants, and I haven't seen many successes from the state of Nevada, and that's what we need to tell our delegates back there, is that a lot of the other states are receiving grant opportunities, but we don't for the state of Nevada. But that's where you do get them involved. You're right. It's either letter campaigns, phone calls, whatever it takes.
And really, that's just one final question, I promise, Mr. Trio. We have a deputy chief position advertised for fire, and I know throughout your report, you talk about the incident command and being able to be an incident command, and that's one of the important things that we haven't had that. And I'm just, and maybe it's more of a question for our new CEO. Do we need that position if we're going to try and bring on 3 battalion chiefs? And I guess that's, it's been posted, but I don't know if that's a fair question for my board.
If I could field one section of that with your permission. I did have a recommendation early on in the report back in December about 3 battalion chief positions that management actually accepted here, and we're working towards that, along with adding some more communication specialists at the same time, to try to alleviate some of the issues that we saw that were actually high priority issues. Supervision within any organization is essential. My recommendation at that time was that you provide supervision on each shift on a 24-hour basis to give you that incident command levels of oversight, but also oversight for your entire airport when incidents take by other folks that normally manage those are off. I use the incidents, electrical outages, sewer backups, the unusual stuff that comes in but needs to have an incident commander assigned to it to management for the success of keeping this airport open. You don't have that right now. You need the 24-hour supervision for those unusual incidents that keep coming. When you get the call for the warehouse fire across the street from Stead, that is an unusual call where they're calling for mutual aid because of unusual circumstances to try to circumvent the system and call everybody else. They should have one primary person they can call and see if that can be granted and responded, and then they respond the appropriate equipment while maintaining our index here, because that's the number one priority, is maintaining the index. And, with that supervisory authorities also take care, those BC positions take care of some of the needs of the airport when it comes to having specialists that can push down the information to every shift, a prevention specialist, an EMS specialist, a training specialist. They're all filled by those battalion chief positions to where they can actually ensure everything is being done in a coordinated effort on every shift, but it's also being done in coordination with one person who's a specialist in that area to meet the needs of the organization. So it wouldn't just be battalion chiefs. My recommendation wasn't to have them come to your station and stay at the station. They would actually be active participants throughout that 24-hour period, meeting with your ADMs, meeting with air communications, meeting with your leadership, so that they can take the information on a daily basis and disseminate it to the firefighters and the captains so that they know what's going on, not only in this airport, but their neighboring agencies. All the fire departments in this agency talk every single day about drawdown. They talk about how many engines they have out of service, how many personnel they don't have, how many stations are closed, because they know they're going to rely on each other. We need to be able to do that as well, because potentially if we need their help, and we know that Station 12, Station 36, our closest stations are either busy, out of service, or unable to respond, we have to have a backup, and that takes one focal point, and you can't, it's very difficult to do with phone calls to off-duty personnel for leadership. It's customary in the industry to have that leadership on site on site to make those decisions for you, and not only for the fire side, but other areas of responsibility when it comes to the operations of your facility.
Thank you.
Can I follow up on that
Yeah,
question?
Trustee Jane.
So we kind of theoretically have two paths in front of us. We could go with the deputy theoretically, we could go with the three battalion chiefs, whatever. I'm sure we'll do what the right thing is. But if we were to do a deputy chief, could their schedule be not opposite, but different than the chief to make sure you increase your coverage out there, rather than mirroring the, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5? Could we say, okay, you could be working a swing shift or something as deputy? Is that
I don't
something
think
that?
the job description went out that way, but.
But I mean, could we increase it with that one person saying, okay, you're going to work opposite kind of what the chief does?
And Trustee, areas do work like that. They do. I, again, would like to be able to work with our new CEO and his staff and come up with some potential proposals that we could bring back that would actually facilitate what your needs are in the organization, those priority areas, identify those priority areas and make sure that we're doing things within the constraints of safety when it comes to our ordinances, regulations, and FDA requirements. And, again, I'm going to say our new CEO has a lot of things that have been thrown out, and he probably was ready to kick me out of his office on Monday when I was there. Glad to see you go, because we did talk about a lot of these issues, and I know that we can actually identify and work on them in the future as well.
Madam Chair, if I may. So I'll look back to Trustee Rose. Your question is, what was Mike going to do next? And I think the real question is, what am I going to do next? This is an excellent report. I've appreciated my chance to talk to Chief Brown about all of this. Not in the room is our fire leadership. They have strong opinions about all of these things as well, and I'm listening to those opinions as well, trying to balance it all out. Clearly, there's work that needs to be done, both very near term and longer term. I've asked Chief Brown to stay engaged with me and my leadership team so that we can make quick progress. Some of this seems like things we all agree on, and that the bar is pretty low here to achieve. Some of it will be longer term, some of it we're resource constrained. A lot of what we talk about is standard. The deputy chief is standard in fire department, so the battalion chief. So I had all of that, importantly. Also much larger fire crews because the index is different. I think the management mindset around what is the purpose of an airport fire department is where I may bring a different perspective. In that, yes, we're an airport, we're a Part 139 airport fire department, and we also need to be open to being all services capabilities. And I think that's something I'm excited to talk with Chief Brown about more, as well as the members of the fire department and the fire department union. I think there's been a lot of talk about that. I have a broader perspective, maybe because I come from a larger airport, more diverse background. I see a lot of value in those things. It takes time, it takes money, it takes other people's money, and that I'm very excited about trying to find other people's money to help us make this. And you have a question, and I'll stop there. There's a lot of work here, but I think there's a lot of opportunity as well.
Great, thank you.
And I agree, Karen, it's now up to you. We've got the report, and for you to execute it as you see fit with your expertise and having been from all sides. Trustee Curatelli.
I just have an opinion, I don't know if everybody else does, but I think as a board member, I think we hired a great new CEO. We all were in 100% approval of what we wanted. And I think we ought to give him a chance to do what he's hired him to do. And I think he hasn't been here long enough to make a lot of progress. In other words, where we're talking, we don't need anybody else at the board to make all these decisions. I just think we hired a new CEO who I feel comes with great credentials, is highly qualified, and I sure as hell like to see who we bought. I think it's a lot smarter than I am, that's the answer.
Any other questions?
Great report.
Thank you so much, Mike. Now, segueing into our next item, Core Group Federal Legislative Update. I know we're going to lose one of our board members, so just want to make sure we have quorum.
We don't have any more action items, so you're okay.
Okay, so we're good. All right.
Okay, good afternoon, board members. My name's Cameron Gresh from the Porter Group. Before I go on, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. I do have one small favor. Chris Porter, my colleague, is also, or excuse me, my boss is also on the line here, but he hasn't been unmuted. Would it be possible to unmute his number so that he can participate as well?
You know what, I'm sorry, let's go back to agenda item number, and I apologize, on item 9.1, there is public comment. We do have public comment on that agenda item, and I apologize. And I believe, Marty? Okay, Mr. Green?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, my name is Ryan Green. For the record, I'm the president of the Reno Airport Firefighters Association. First, I'd like to thank you, Chairwoman Speraza, and all the trustees for bringing this issue forward and having Chief Brown take part in it. Thank you for making this a priority. When I say I'm speaking for our association. We look forward to providing a high quality level of service and then increasing our own personal safety. And we want to issue a specific thank you to Chief Brown for your unbiased report, your work, and your leadership. We truly appreciate your efforts and mentorship. Mr. Griffin, we welcome you to the Reno Tahoe Airport team, and we look forward to our new future. The Reno Airport firefighters want to invite Mr. Griffin and any trustees to visit the fire station, share a meal, or just come have a cup of coffee. We promise we will comply with all current COVID-19 guidelines, airport and state directives with regard to protecting all of our safety, but we would like to forge some new relationships and get to know all of you. So we wanted to extend that. And once again, thank you for making these issues a priority.
Was that it, Brian? I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate the feedback. And thank you for the invitation. Was there any other public comment at this time?
Not at this time, but I need to ask who I was supposed to unmute.
Chris Porter. It was his boss. Chris Porter.
Chris Porter, and his cell phone number that he's calling in from ends in the digits 2683, if that helps.
He can speak, he is muted on his end.
He needs to press *6 on his phone to unmute.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Chairwoman, for having us today, being able to speak at the board meeting. I want to first apologize that Congressman Porter is not able to join us. He had to step off a few minutes ago to go into a congressional briefing, along with General Herbert. I think he just had to step off as well, so they both send their sincere apologies for not being able to join us today. But I do want to, there's a lot to cover, and I'm going to kick it off to my colleague, Cameron Gresh, who's been working very closely with the airport, with Tina and Darren, and of course, Mary Lee. So Cameron, do you want to start us off, please?
Absolutely. Hey, everyone. First things first, we'll go ahead and talk about the biggest item of the day. And this is going to be a more brief legislative briefing here today because I understand, I don't want to take up too much more of the board's time, but just know that there's more detail on all of this. Should you want it, it's been written down. I'm happy to forward you any more information. But right now, Heels and Heroes is obviously the talk of the town in DC. We've run into significant roadblocks regarding those negotiations. However, the airport funding pieces are not the part that Congress is arguing over, so please don't let that be your initial thought. The liability protections and some state and local government funding is turning out to be the biggest issue right now. Honestly, as far as timeline for an actual bill passage, truthfully, would likely be early September at this point. Members have started going back home. They're in their districts. They're doing district work. They're not going to have a whole lot of appetite to come back and hash out any of this unless a breakthrough is made soon. And it does not look like, based off of yesterday's news at least, that that is anywhere close to happening. However, the HEALS Act does contain $10 billion of additional AIP funding that RTAA would, in fact, be eligible to make use of. And it's something we're following very closely. We've worked with ACI and their partner lobbyists all across the country in different airports in different states to highlight and elevate the issue to the delegation. They're well aware of RTAA's need and understand that this is something that needs to happen. Unfortunately, right now, we're all just mired down by the highest level talks happening between Secretary Mnuchin, White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. Until there is a breakthrough there, we aren't going to see any more development on this, but they're both on the clock, and it is likely that a consensus is going to at least be reached probably by September, if not sooner. But that's the HEALS Act. Right now, we're monitoring that, and we've made it very clear to the delegation that that's a huge priority, and they're with us, and they're doing as much as they can to help. Moving forward onto some things happening stateside, the North Valleys Corridor project that we are currently engaged with helping RTAA develop congressionally right now involves getting ready to have meetings with members of Congress to identify the project to them and give their staff members the detailed information that they'll need to understand what federal funding avenues we would qualify for or be eligible to take from. I've identified several of the most popular programs existing at the federal level in multiple agencies that I think the RTAA, or in many cases, its stakeholder partners would have to apply, as these are only open to some city and county governments and stuff like that. But either way, in speaking as part of the entire development team, I've identified several projects, or excuse me, grant programs I think RTA would want to look at and disseminate to its shareholders, and I believe it's already occurred. We're identifying more every day, but our main point of activity right now would be getting presentation materials set and then getting ready to speak to members of Congress and formally introduce them to the program. We sent letters last month teasing a little bit about what we were going to do. The next step would be having these meetings and facilitating further congressional support. That's in the works for relatively soon. I will check with our office after this to figure out when scheduling is going to happen. I know it's very difficult coordinating meetings between several different entities, but just know that that is our next highest priority. Moving on from there, we were made aware yesterday of the NEPA kind of approval process that RTS and our partner stakeholders have been moving through and have run into some unfortunate roadblocks. We understand very well that federal government approval processes can take certainly a long time. However, I understand that this is now an urgent issue for the airport, and it is something that the General, Congressman Porter, I, and Chris are all working with Congress to figure out what tools and levers we can pull to go ahead and mitigate that. Right now, telling them about the problem is item number one, and that can happen independent of the greater RTS development meetings if the airport so chooses, or we can wait to bring it up when we're in front of the delegation as a cohesive unit. It's completely up to the airport, but either way, that is something we've recently been made aware of and are working to correct, as we understand it is a huge, incredible impediment to the rest of the project. We're learning all we can about the process and how to influence it right now, and I look forward to having more information about our efforts in this area by our next board update. Apart from that, there are a couple of other pieces of legislation floating out there that are not connected to coronavirus response that we've written up some briefings for, and I'd like to just go over quickly. Congresswoman Dina Titus recently released her HR 7920 to promote health and safe tourism. What that does is very similar to Senator Catherine Cortez Masto's EDA funding bill, the STEP Act. Both of these bills pump more money into the Economic Development Authority that operates revolving loan funds that entities who are not eligible for things like PPP, EIDL, or maybe even the Main Street Loan Program could utilize to go ahead and get some funding in through their doors as well. These are the industries like casinos and other industries that were largely ignored by a lot of the protection programs offered by the federal government in the wake of coronavirus. The EDA funding in these two bills is at $5 and $10 billion respectively. Congresswoman Titus's bill comes with the added stipulation that city governments and public entities who get CRF funding would be able to use those fundings to promote travel and tourism within their environments as an allowable usage of the CRF, which is big news. That's the biggest difference between the two pieces of legislation I just described to you. And again, we can get more information on this. I just don't want to take up too much more time. I love getting in the weeds on this as Tina and Darren are starting to learn. Please, I don't want to bore anyone to death, but know that there is more information about those if you'd like. The other two pieces of legislation are the Airport Infrastructure Readiness Act, which would allow airports to stake their level of AIP funding to pre-COVID passenger enplanement levels. You've seen some similar language in other pieces of legislation being put forward, and while the HEALS Act, which again has not been signed into law, does declare something similar, it doesn't enshrine it into law as tightly as this bill would. It also doesn't give as long of a period. This would be up to 2024, an airport would be able to stake its AIP funding on, say, FY 2019 passenger enplanement levels in order to make sure that future AIP funding doesn't directly reflect the downward enplanement levels that I know have been plaguing airports across the country. That's going to play a huge role in RTAA getting its wheels back up and serving more flights. We certainly don't want our AIP funding to be diminished years after the fact. That wouldn't be good for development at all, and that's something that this bill hopes to annihilate. It has currently been marked up. It is in committee. It is waiting for referral to the Senate floor. It would also need a House companion. Right now, I haven't seen that. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Just means those talks haven't happened yet. Apart from that, we have another bill from our friends in Missouri in the House that would allow federal contractor incentive payments to be an allowable reimbursable cost when you're talking about federally funded Department of Transportation projects inside airports. As of right now, there is a small list in Title 49 of the U.S. Code that delineates what is an allowable usage. This would simply add incentive payments to federal contractors on that list, making it something that the federal government could pay for as opposed to the entity airport in question out of their own AIP funding. So that's also been through committee. It does have a Senate companion, but right now, as far as legislative action, again, we don't know a whole lot right now. September, again, would be the earliest, but that's not a guarantee. Congress has multiple appropriations bills and the NDAA that it needs to pass into law. Those two things are just some of the must-pass legislation that we're going to have to worry about. So congressional schedules are going to be very tight, and I can't speak intelligently right now about the future of this legislation, but just know that it's out there, and we're looking at it because we've identified it as being supremely positive to the airport. But other than that, I've been speaking for a little while here. That is our top 40,000-foot view, federal overview of everything we're working on right now. I can, of course, offer more detail if anyone would like. I can also answer some questions if anyone has those right now as well.
Questions from the board? Just quick question. Say, on the EDA grant, you said that was sponsored by Congresswoman Titus?
Yes, that HR 7920.
Okay. Can you give us information on that? I think that one is very important to our gaming, tourism, hospitality industry, but also correlates with the airport. I don't know if there's things or positions this board can take to help send letters of support for that, but that's absolutely critical. I think in a lot of the legislation prohibited, it was passed before in the CARES Act, as you mentioned, those industries from taking part in getting those funds or the PPP. So does that have a chance of going through?
Honestly, questions like that are a little bit difficult to answer in any legislative environment, but certainly this one. I can tell you that letters of support and highlighting the importance of legislation like this to the entire delegation is absolutely not out of line and would certainly be welcome. I'm happy to get you some more information about this bill. I can of course work with their staff and answer any questions you have. As far as its ability to be turned into law, that's something that depends on a lot of factors that right now we simply can't speak to. It's got the calendar working against it, but that is by no means a guarantee of its death in Congress. But as right now, just upon introduction, that's something I'd have to go around and get a little bit more info on before I could speak to that particular part of the question intelligently. However, I will say letters of support and further information and the airport asking the office what it can do to help would certainly not be unwelcome and would go a long way in Congresswoman Titus's office. And we can facilitate that as well by providing a draft letter or some such and helping make sure that communication gets through unabated to the Congresswoman's office. So we're absolutely happy to help there.
Yeah, Cameron, thank you. And if I can add, Senator Masso's bill being so close to Congresswoman Titus's bill, there's bipartisan support right now for Senator Cortez Masso's bill. And I think the play is to have it included or something similar included into the next recovery package. Obviously, that's kind of a throw of the dice at the minute with the way the negotiations are going on. But having bipartisan support really goes a long way to have similar language put into the next recovery package.
Trustee Chapman, I was just going to say that the U.S. Travel Association is working really hard on this. I guess great. Yeah, so there's I can forward one of the last, sign this letter, sign this email kind of things that will go to all of your representatives.
That would be great. Anything we can do, because, we modified the PPP for smaller establishments, so maybe there's a chance that that could really help tourism, and I'm certainly something the airport should be supportive of. And then I do want to thank Tina for your work on the North Valleys and trying to get that grant. That's a big, not to forget about STED, that economic development grant is going to be key. And I'm sorry, is it Cameron? You had mentioned the environmental process and the hurdle there. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Absolutely. So recently, the Porter Group was informed that the NEPA process out of the EPA, which is the National Environmental Protection Act, I believe, has regulations involved in doing environmental impact studies on properties that are going to be developed or changed by any federal entities, or I think also just government entities at large, though I'm unsure about that last part. But either way, this is a process that most cities and counties will probably be familiar with. If you ever tried to build anything anywhere where there is open territory and animals, you're going to have to go through the NEPA process. I don't have too many specifics at this time other than that the applications associated with certain parts of the RTS Development Corridor project are experiencing massive holdups right now to the point that we have stakeholders who are expressing great concern about moving forward. And to that end, what we'd like to do is go ahead and get as much information as we can about the applications, their status, who we need to talk to, and then informing our congressional delegation and soliciting their support in sending letters to the EPA, specifically the individuals in charge of overseeing these kinds of applications and demanding, quite frankly, explanations as to why these applications have taken so long. We can also request perhaps some technical assistance as well in terms of getting on with the agency and having them explain to us anything we could be doing to help ourselves in this regard. Until I get more information, that's the most specific I can possibly get right now. But utilizing congressional support in this area is not to be overlooked. It is I think are going to be a critical part of our strategy moving forward. And while I'm sorry to hear that the NEPA process has been so difficult for the RTS development crew, just know that getting congressional intervention in these things, and General Herbert and Congressman Porter would certainly agree with me if they were here, definitely speaks to a better outcome. So as of right now, we're developing a plan of action on that involves our congressional delegation.
And I would ask Trustee Terry is the liaison to that working group, that land working group, if you could just keep us informed on that and that process, because that's the economic development instead. So very important.
Happy to do so.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, I'll just add, if I may, we had a lengthy conversation about this with the Porter Group on Wednesday, and it's not just the North Valley corridors or the RTS, it's every development deal we're trying to work on right now. The NEPA timeline just grows longer and longer, and it's really a growing concern that affects revenue streams and people's ability to bring revenue streams to market. So great conversation with the Porter Group, and Cameron touched on it, so we'll be something we continue to talk about.
Great, thanks for getting on that. And then just the last question on the SAFER grant, just coordinating with that and when our CEO maybe a report in the future on what we want to go for, what we're eligible for, do you have any information on that? I mean, SAFER's constantly a grant, so I didn't know, Cameron, if there was any additional appropriation to the CARES Act for SAFER grants.
Not that I saw initially. I know the airport has an application which we did help facilitate some letters of support from members of Congress on that. As far as additional funding for the program, I can't think of a top line number off the top of my head right now, but I could absolutely look into that. I think their regular appropriation is something like $350 million, and I don't remember hearing about more than that being added in by CARES, but I can absolutely go back and double check.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, we'll move on. Any public comment?
I don't see any at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to item 9.3, President and CEO report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be as brief as I can, given where we're at on time here. So my report is before you. It is extensive, and that's the conversation I'm having with Lori about what's the right amount of information and what is your input as well. And we may retime some of the information so it's not every month that you're getting quite so much, but we're also going to give you everything that you need. I'm going to highlight just a couple points and then add a couple of my own walk-on items. Noted there at the top is a delay in our FAA Part 139 annual inspection. And like everything else these days, that's highly unusual. We don't have a date right now to when the FAA is going to come perform that inspection. As I'm sure you're all probably aware, that's an annual event. It takes 4 to 6 days to complete with the FAA, and most airports spend a lot of time getting ready for it. But I want to put in some context for you. This is something we should be able to go through on any given day of the year. That really it's just a formality, and that if we're maintaining and managing our facilities to Part 139 standards, it's not just when the FAA comes to inspect us. And that is just a mentality and a management approach that I believe most commercial airports have. So we'll continue to work with that staff and come up with a time for when they can come visit us, and we'll go through the process. But it's not something that is concerning to me. I also wanted to note the full-scale triennial exercise that is scheduled for, I think, the week after next. This is a once every 3-year event that all commercial service airports go through. It's a significant lift to get all of the players together and to perform an exercise of this magnitude with all the mutual aid agencies. It's a great test of an airport's response capability. My kudos to the team this year for continuing to move forward with this in a really difficult environment. It's going to look a lot different than a lot of triennial exercises normally do because of the physical distancing requirements. There'll be more more talking through some of the things. There'll be less people involved than would normally be. They'll use some props and dummies and whatnot to simulate medical emergencies and the triage that occurs, whereas oftentimes you see airports use actors or students to actually portray the victims. So, we still have to do it. It's really important. It'll look different this year, but I'm excited to see how it goes here. I'll be out there with the team, and it's just kind of great timing for me to get to come in and experience that right off the bat early in my time here. We talked about air service development earlier. Hassan took you through all of that. I'm not going to highlight anything else there other than the extreme volatility of flight schedules right now. It's unlike anything I've seen in my career. We're getting notice within weeks of flights leaving, flights being added. It's very unusual, but it's reflective of the airline industry right now. Airlines are extremely focused on bookings, and what we see happening in September is because of what they see happening with bookings. And they're sitting airplanes right now when they don't see the booking level that they need. So, the one good piece of news that I will report out to you was Southwest posted their January schedule. Take that for whatever it's worth, right? But the golden nugget in there is that it includes a daily service from Reno to Dallas Love Field, which is something that in any other time would be an extraordinary accomplishment and cause for huge celebration. I sincerely hope that when we get to January, we have that daily service. It's hard to get. Dallas Love Field is slot controlled, and it's a difficult airport to get into. This will be seasonal to start with, in which we've had before, but we've never had it daily. And that's how you build on these things. You expand into the shoulder season, and pretty soon you have a year-round service that you've always aspired to. So it's great that Southwest still recognizes the importance of this market, especially in that wintertime. Later today and then tomorrow, I have my initial meetings with Ann Silver with the Chamber and Jennifer Cunningham with the RSCBA. I'm already keenly aware of how important those relationships are. The collaboration and partnership is more important right now than probably ever. And it was one of the things that appealed to me in considering this opportunity is how well organized this region is in terms of going to airlines and speaking with one voice. And it's more important right now that we put aside whatever differences we have between regions and communities and go to Dallas and go to Atlanta and Minneapolis or wherever we have to go and speak with a single voice for our region of why do we need the capacity that we need. And I'm committed to that. These partners will hear that right off the bat. Then they're already great relationships. I know that, and I'm extremely grateful to step into that and to help us take it to the next level, which is what will be required for sure. And then just lastly, our Airport Airline Affairs Committee meeting is next week. Nick James with Southwest Airlines, our committee chair, is coming to Reno. I'll meet with him. Our team will meet with him, including members of the RASC Executive Committee will also be meeting with Nick. One of his first trips out of Dallas, like a lot of us, the airlines have been on lockdown and they're doing very little business travel. But it's an important meeting for him. It's great to get him out of the office and to have Reno be one of his first stops. I know Nick from Portland, and I'm looking forward to working with him. I know a lot of the Southwest team in Dallas, and I'm excited to step into that relationship at the next level. Madam Chair, that completes my report. Thank you very much.
And I just want to thank you, Darren, for the report and email of the detailed report. I can tell you for one, I really appreciate the update on what they're doing, and I know you've been working 80 hours a week, and I really appreciate it. Just one question on the report, maybe follows. I see here on the Conrack facility, and I know just the Herb's bankruptcy, and I don't know what's going on with Conracks around the country, and I know we've been here a long time today, so I don't want to prolong it, but maybe just in the next report coming up, just kind of an update on that. I know, Tina, you guys have all been working on it, but I know we have that expenditure, and I just kind of want to know where we are. Things have changed since we first approved that, and I don't know how those facilities are, if they're continuing to build around the country, but interested, just maybe a side note for next agenda.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Report on this, you bet.
Thank you. Any board comments, questions, and requests for future agenda items? And board? No, I think public safety would like an update on that, standing agenda item, for next meeting. And I think obviously the financial, report. And at this time, any comments from the board? Okay, moving on.
Good first meeting.
Darren, we're thrilled to have you.
Got
right in.
Plenty to work on.
Plenty to work on. Any public comment, at this time? Marty?
We've taken the.
Okay, thank you.
No, not.
Okay, thank you very much. Upcoming meetings and events are listed, and do we have a motion for adjournment? Yes.
Jennifer has it.
Do we have a motion for trustee Rose? Do we have a second? Come on, Mr. Caratelli. Second from trustee Jay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.
You can post.
Oh, I'm sorry, ask anyone opposed to us adjourning. Don't worry.